The most desired CEO in the city falls in love with the only black woman who wants nothing from him. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The first rumors of Julius Grant's arrival reached the penthouse ballroom long before he stepped through the gilded doors. A ripple of anticipation swept the crowd. Bankers lifted their flutes of rosé as though in salute to an unseen monarch. Junior partners straightened tuxedo lapels, and veteran socialites smoothed sequined gowns they had chosen precisely because a single fleeting compliment from Grant could still buy them a month's worth of relevance. To the assembled elite of Crescent City, Julius was not merely the most desired CEO in town. He was a living metric by which value was measured. His logistics empire spanned 4 continents, and a nod from him, just one, could shift careers, budgets, even city ordinances. Everyone in the room understood that tonight's fundraiser for the Harbor Children's Trust was less about philanthropy than proximity. They came to orbit him. Yet Julius himself crossed the threshold with the unhurried gravity of a man visiting his own memories. He paused to let the soft light from the chandelier strike his patent leather shoes, then exhaled so subtly only his security chief noticed. For all his calculated poise, he could not slow the flutter at the pit of his stomach. It had been there every day since his board announced the merger negotiations. It beat against his ribs like a caged finch, reminding him that success purchased no immunity from anxiety. Tonight he would confirm or refuse the billion-dollar acquisition of North River Freight. Journalists would pounce on the slightest flicker in his eyes. Investors awaited coded phrases, but Julius's thoughts were already drifting toward the single element of the evening no advisor had foreseen. The museum quiet woman who, 6 weeks ago, had looked straight through him as though he were a pane of glass. She had sat alone at an outdoor cafe near Riverside Park, sipping black coffee and annotating a weather-worn paperback. Julius had stopped to take a confidential call, impressed by the cafe's discreet corner tables. When he finished, he realized that the woman beside him had ignored the conversation completely, ignored him. She did not moisten her lips at the mention of 8-digit valuations. She didn't glance at the obsidian steel chronograph that gleamed at his wrist. She merely reopened her book, placed a blue sticky note on the margin, and continued. Julius, who could recite the precise moment every mentor, rival, or stranger first registered his presence, was struck dumb. She blushed when he complimented her annotations, smiled politely, then returned his remark with a gentle, "Thank you, sir." And that was all. Her indifference settled over him like a riddle. "Sir," as though she were speaking to an anonymous clerk. He had offered to replace her spilled coffee, and she declined. She was keeping the flavor of the conversation intact, she'd said, with a soft accent from neighborhoods the gala crowd had long since forgotten. She slipped away moments later, leaving him with an untouched cup and a business card whose absence he could almost feel in his breast pocket. Now, in the ballroom thick with orchestral strings, Julius nodded to donors whose names he barely heard, scanning for her silhouette. He had dispatched every subtle inquiry his PR chief could muster. No last name beyond Brooks, no social media tags, no corporate resume. Only that single word of introduction, Danielle. He clung to it the way a cartographer clings to the first star over a darkened sea. Danielle Brooks did not care to be found. She was nearer the loading docks of the Grand Horizon Hotel than its chandeliers, standing behind a portable easel, adjusting the final brushstroke on a 6-foot mural commissioned by the hotel for its centennial. Her coveralls bore faint splatters of cobalt and amber, but the foreman who came to inspect her work noted that not a fleck of paint marked her skin. She kept her hair in a braided crown beneath a navy kerchief, eyes fixed on the interplay of gold leaf and midnight blue that evoked the harbor skyline at dusk. Art, to Danielle, was a contract between honesty and patience. It could not be rushed, and it could not pander. She knew the gala took place 4 stories above her. She had been offered 2 VIP passes as part of the hotel's local talent spotlight. She declined with a polite email. A fundraiser packed with silk and politics held no interest for her. She had her rent to cover, her sister's nursing tuition to supplement, and a half-sketched series honoring the dock workers who once unloaded sugarcane from battered freighters. That was her crowd. Back inside, Julius completed his circuit of handshakes and found himself cornered by Harold Sumner, North River's interim CFO, whose grin settled like a net. Sumner praised Julius's vision, pressed him for a photo op, then inched dangerously close to the real question. Would Julius announce the merger's approval tonight? Julius smiled with the precision of a chef slicing phyllo, replied that every good harbor waited for the tide, then excused himself under pretext of greeting the mayor. But the mayor was already engulfed by television cameras. Julius wound his way toward a narrower hallway, slipped past 2 distracted servers, and broke into the hush of a service elevator bayside. Instantly, the air smelled of lemon polish and freight oil. He inhaled, relieved. From the service stairwell, he heard laughter echo upward, a quick, bright sound freely given. He followed, descending 2 flights until he glimpsed a cluster of hotel staff, porters, prep cooks, a dishwasher, huddled around a makeshift gallery where a mural shimmered under fluorescent bulbs. In the middle stood Danielle, her sleeves rolled to the elbow, discussing light refraction with a sous chef who seemed astonished to be part of the conversation. Julius stopped on the landing, unseen. Danielle traced the outline of the harbor cranes, explaining how each rivet caught sunrise. She spoke like someone polishing a lullaby, equal parts certainty and wonder. Julius felt the finch in his ribs settle to stillness. He could not decipher why her voice calmed him, only that it did. He approached quietly as the employees dispersed, and Danielle turned, registering him with the same polite coolness as before. "Sir," she said again, no awe, no fluster. "That corridor's employees only. The gala is upstairs." Julius smiled. "I think the gala can manage a moment without me." She studied him. Tailored suit, cufflinks edged in onyx, hair disciplined by precision cuts. She seemed to weigh how little of that mattered against the quiet of the loading bay. "Do you like it?" she asked, nodding to the mural. He breathed out, letting his gaze travel across the painted water, the suggestion of gull wings, lanterns in the distance that flickered as if one gust might extinguish them. "It's alive," he answered softly. And he meant it. Danielle's expression eased but only slightly. "Alive is a dangerous word for art," she replied. "Alive can disappoint you. It can defy what you wanted it to say." "Maybe that's why it's worth the risk," Julius said. A silence settled that was not uncomfortable, only curious. Somewhere behind them, a freight elevator opened and closed, reminding them of the 2 worlds stacked upon each other. The gleaming ballroom above, and this cradle of cargo below. Julius broke the silence first. "Walk with me," he said, gesturing toward the dockside doors. Danielle hesitated, then wiped a fleck of ochre from her cheek and followed. The loading ramp opened to a night salted with harbor breeze. Containers stacked like sleeping leviathans formed aisles of shadow. The city's distant skyline burned amber. Julius removed his jacket, draped it over a railing, and sat on a steel crate. "What scares you more?" he asked. "A painting that lives, or a world content with dead walls?" Danielle folded her arms, weighing the question. "What scares me," she said, "is a man who invites truth into the conversation and then edits it for profit." Under the sodium lamps, her eyes were dark flame. Julius felt the remark strike home. He did not flinch. "I deserve that," he admitted. "Most days I cannot list the products my company ships without consulting a ledger first, and I'm wrestling a merger that might gut half the dock workers in this city. So yes, maybe I'm the worst kind of editor." Danielle's posture softened by a degree. She perched on an adjacent crate, facing him. the line of her jaw resolute. Then why come here, CEO? Why chase a muralist when investors demand your signature upstairs? He chuckled, quiet, genuine. Because the investors already know my answers. You, Miss Brooks, might ask better questions. He paused. Did you ever lose sleep over a thing you love but cannot explain? She considered, pulling at a loose thread on her sleeve. Every night, she said, but I choose to paint anyway. Julius nodded, emboldened. Then tonight, when I walk back into that ballroom, I need to know what the harbor cranes look like at sunrise. I need to know why gulls circle the grain elevators before dawn. I need to carry a truth untouched by quarterly reports. He held her gaze. Would you let me commission a piece? No boardrooms, no PR, just your vision, unedited. Danielle rose. You want to buy honesty, she said, not unkindly. But honesty doesn't invoice easily. Then let me rent it, he replied, half smiling. One conversation at a time. She shook her head, in disbelief, in complicated amusement. You're persistent. I'm terrified, he corrected. Persistent is what men call themselves when they want credit for not giving up. I've never stood in front of something that didn't want my approval and thought, what if it's my approval that's irrelevant? Danielle inhaled a gust of sea air as if weighing the sincerity of the wind. If I agree, she said slowly, I set the terms. You listen more than you speak. No corporate entourage. And you donate tonight's silent auction proceeds to the Dockworkers Scholarship Fund. Quietly. Julius extended his hand without hesitation. Done. She didn't shake it, but she didn't step away. One more condition, she added. You meet me tomorrow at sunrise. Pier 32. Bring no cameras, no assistants, just yourself and a question you're afraid to answer. Julius felt the finch in his ribs stretch its wings and settle onto a calm perch. I'll be there, he whispered. From inside the building, the orchestra struck the first notes of the waltz that would herald his keynote speech. Danielle picked up a stray brush, dipped it in pale gold, and arced a single glimmer onto the mural's horizon. Then go, she said. Your crowd is waiting. He reclaimed his jacket, but before stepping through the dock doors, he turned. Thank you, he said, and he meant the words more than any pledge he had ever delivered to a board of directors. Danielle watched until the door shut. Alone again with the hush of containers and sea, she touched the fresh stroke of gold, feeling its warmth beneath her fingertip. She wondered, not for the first time, what kind of world might exist if the powerful learned to paint before they learned to profit? High above, the ballroom glittered. Julius Grant strode toward the podium, the scent of salt still braided through his breath. As cameras flashed, he pictured a brush meeting canvas at dawn and heard a voice indifferent to fortune ask, "Do you like it?" Beneath the roar of applause, he whispered his answer, "It's alive." The sky over Crescent Harbor was still a gray-blue bruise when Julius Grant's driver rolled to a stop beside Pier 32. The usual dawn clamor, forklifts coughing, gulls squabbling over scraps, had not yet begun. Only the tide's quiet inhalation broke the hush. Julius dismissed the driver, refusing even the umbrella presented against the spring mist. He checked his watch, 05:14, and slipped it into his pocket. Today he wanted no metrics between himself and the moment. Danielle Brooks was already there, seated cross-legged on the pier's edge, sketchbook braced against her knees. A thermos of coffee steamed at her side. She did not look up until Julius's shoes tapped against the damp boards. Without greeting, she used the tip of her pencil to indicate a spot beside her. Julius sat, wincing as cold wood seeped through his suit trousers. The city skyline rose across the water, each office tower a darker shadow against the paling east. "Question first," she said, twirling the pencil like a baton. "Something you're afraid to answer. Let's see if CEOs can keep promises before sunrise." Julius inhaled the tang of brine and machine oil, a scent he had known since childhood afternoons at his uncle's marina. "Why?" he began, choosing each word. "Does power change the person who holds it faster than the person who needs it?" Danielle lifted one eyebrow, pleased by the difficulty of the query. "Power is quicker than language," she said after a moment. "By the time we name it, it's already rewriting our nervous system. Fight, flight, or leverage. People at the receiving end get time to process. The holder is processing and wielding at the same instant. That scrambling rewires character." She shrugged. "You asked." Julius digested the answer, gaze on the skyline. In the hush that followed, Danielle angled her sketchbook so he could see, a charcoal outline of the cranes, their skeletal limbs stretched like giants mid-stride. "What do you see?" she asked. He studied the lines. Quick, deliberate strokes, an economy of shading that still conveyed mass and motion. "I see tension, as if they're deciding whether to lift something or let go." "Good," she murmured. "That's the harbor's perpetual question." A gull coasted low above the pier, wings silvering as the horizon ignited with saffron. Julius felt the finch in his chest stir, not frantic now, but curious. "How long will you work?" he asked. "Until the light changes," Danielle said. "Then I'll deliver canvases to a community center on 6th Street, prep 2 more panels for the hotel, and handle invoices. Art isn't magic, sir. It's arithmetic wrapped in paint." "Julius," he corrected. She acknowledged the correction with a nod, nothing more. "Your turn," she said. "Ask what you came to ask." He exhaled. "The merger vote is tonight. My board assumes I'll say yes. Analysts forecast a 27% share spike. North River's shareholders will celebrate." He paused. "But it means laying off 700 port workers, automating warehouses, and rewriting supply contracts that fund half this waterfront. The cranes in your drawing, they may lift nothing soon, because the cargo will reroute to inland hubs." He watched the water lap against pylons. "Yesterday I was certain numbers dictate destiny. Then you asked what scares me." "Losing 700 stories should scare you," Danielle said, voice low. "It does. Enough that I want an alternative, but not enough to guarantee I'll choose it. That terrifies me most, knowing better and signing anyway." Danielle closed her sketchbook. "Then walk the docks with me." He followed her along the pier to a maintenance gate marked "Authorized Personnel Only." She produced a chipped access card, likely borrowed from a foreman she'd befriended. Beyond the gate, catwalks and ladders crisscrossed between corrugated warehouses. They ascended to crane B-17, whose cab perched 70 feet above the water. Danielle punched a code, and the control booth opened. She gestured for him to enter. Inside, the air smelled of grease and decades-old thermos coffee. The seat cushions were split, the joysticks smoothed to a matte sheen by countless calloused palms. "Sit," she invited. Julius hesitated, then settled into the operator's chair. Danielle flicked a breaker. Lights along the boom winked awake, illuminating the decks below. Dawn glazed the harbor in molten copper. From this height, Julius saw rows of containers like children's blocks, tugboats nosing through swirls of diesel and sea foam, and, beyond the breakwater, the first incoming freighter riding low with cargo. "Every box down there," Danielle said, leaning against the doorframe, "carries someone's harvest, someone's overtime, someone's medicine shipment. 700 workers guide them ashore so they reach factories, hospitals, family kitchens. Replace them with automation, and those boxes still move, but the stories vanish. They become ghost cargo." Julius gripped the joysticks, imagining them dead, motions scripted by software. "Ghost cargo," he echoed. "Numbers don't feel haunted," Danielle continued, "but people do. You asked why power alters its holder faster than its needer. Because it shields them from hauntings. They sign, step away, and no voice follows." Julius angled his head, meeting her gaze. Stay in the story, he said quietly. Haunt me, Danielle. Her lips parted, half surprise, half understanding. Then listen. She toggled the intercom, patching in harbor radio. Voices crackled. Dockmaster Ramirez discussing tide surge. Engineer Lou confirming crane-bearing replacements. Longshoreman Samuels requesting relief for a crewman whose daughter was in labor. Ordinary frequencies of labor stitched together into tapestries of need. Julius closed his eyes. He felt gears turn underfoot, vibrations transmitted through steel and marrow alike. The harbor was a living organ, and he had considered severing it as casually as trimming fat from a spreadsheet. When he opened his eyes, Danielle was standing beside him, one hand on the safety rail. "You asked for honesty," she said softly. "It costs consequences." "I can afford consequences," he replied, "not if you measure them in stock points." The intercom squawked. "Samuels to B-17, appreciate the lift check. Looks like the CEO forgot his own party." Laughter rippled across the frequency. Julius startled. Danielle muted the channel, grinning. "They see everything." He rose from the chair, adrenaline offset by clarity. "Come to the vote tonight," he said. "The boardroom's on the 69th floor of the Meridian Center. There's no art on the walls, just paneling and ego. We'll bring yours." He tapped the sketchbook. "I want them to face it." Danielle's expression folded into wary curiosity. "I'm not a prop, Julius." "I know. You're the mirror." She weighed the invitation. "One condition." He braced himself, hoping it was feasible. "You let the dockworkers' union present before the vote. 15 minutes, uninterrupted." Julius thought of his board chair, Harriet Coe, whose tolerance for unscheduled speakers was nil. Then he thought of the intercom's laughter, the tidal hush between containers. "Done," he said. Danielle extended her hand this time. He shook it, warmth surprising despite the chill. "Then I'll be there," she affirmed. 9 hours later, Julius stood outside the Meridian Center boardroom, straightening a tie he didn't remember choosing. Danielle arrived with a small entourage, Dockmaster Ramirez in pressed coveralls, Longshoreman Samuels still smelling of diesel, and a union steward named Lyle Carter whose thick hands looked built for steady ropes and heavier arguments. Danielle carried a rolled canvas strapped in twine. Harriet Coe appeared, silver hair immaculate, her smile a barricade. "Mr. Grant, the quorum is waiting." "Give me 5 minutes," Julius said. Harriet's gaze slid to the dock workers, registering hazard. "That wasn't on the agenda." "It is now." Julius opened the door, motioning them through. Cameras for official minutes whirred in ceiling recesses. Board members glanced up from tablets. Julius spoke before Harriet regained the floor. "We'll hear a presentation, then we'll vote." Harriet inhaled to object, but something in Julius's posture halted her. The finch in his chest was silent, replaced by an unfamiliar steadiness. Danielle unrolled the canvas onto the conference table. Gasps fluttered. The painting depicted Crescent Harbor at dawn, but inverted. Cranes were rendered as figures of flesh and bone, arms raised not to lift but to plead. Containers floated above them like hollow promises. The water mirrored the sky in bruised purples, and beneath the surface silhouettes of workers pressed upward, palms flat against an invisible barrier. In one corner, gold leaf traced a freighter's wake, dissolving into coins. "This is ghost cargo," Danielle said, voice clear. "Painted this morning." Ramirez stepped forward. "That wake right there? It's the subsidized lane we dredged last year. City bonds funded it so North River could dock bigger ships. They promised 10-year security for the workforce. Now you're merging and automating us out." Samuels laid a metal hook on the polished cherry wood. "My father's. 42 years on these decks. Automation can move boxes. It can't raise kids, coach Little League, or buy dinner at waterfront diners your shareholders frequent after ribbon cuttings." The union steward adjusted his tie, an awkward gesture on thick neck. "Give us 5 years. Phase in training for hybrid operations. Keep 2 shifts human, 1 automated. We'll prove efficiency beats full automation because experienced hands fix what sensors miss. He slid a cost-benefit statement across the table, already audited by third-party accountants. Harriet Coe skimmed it, lips thin. "Mr. Carter, sentiment isn't strategy." Carter met her gaze. "Neither is scorched earth, ma'am." Silence hovered. Julius breathed once, then spoke. "Harriet, before we proceed, I move to amend the merger terms. Any adoption of North River's automation must include the hybrid model, with mandatory retraining funds and no layoffs for 5 years. We absorb the short-term margin hit. Shareholders get long-term retention and ESG compliance." The room erupted, some in protest, some in excited argument. Harriet's eyes flashed. "You cannot rewrite the deal 10 minutes before vote." "I can," Julius replied, "if the majority supports it." He turned to Danielle, nodded, then addressed the board. "We're given rare chances to haunt ourselves before others do it for us. This painting is one. I propose we listen." For 40 minutes, questions volleyed. Costs, supply chain timelines, shareholder optics. Ramirez and Carter answered with data marshaled over midnight spreadsheets. Danielle spoke only once when a director sneered that art had no place in logistics. "It has every place in decisions that shape human landscapes," she said. "If you ignore stories, you inherit ghosts." The sneer faded. When the board finally voted, the motion passed, 8-3. Automation would proceed, but with the hybrid clause, retraining stipends, and a multi-year moratorium on layoffs. North River's original CEO, a stoic man known for empire building, leaned back, absorbing the compromise. "You'll get flack," he warned Julius in private. "I'll take wind over hauntings," Julius replied. That night, Julius exited the Meridian Center alone. On the sidewalk, Danielle waited, mural tubes slung over her shoulder, backpack at her feet. Streetlights haloed mist around her braids. "You lost money today," she said. "I bought breathing room," he answered, "for 700 families and a conscience." She smiled, small, but genuine. "Then sunrise tomorrow? Same pier. You owe me a second question." Julius grinned. "I'll bring 2. He started toward his car, then stopped. "Danielle." "Yes, Julius?" "Thank you for haunting me." She tipped an invisible hat. "Anytime." The finch inside his ribcage lifted, beat its wings once, and soared into quiet. Shareholder wrath arrived on the morning tide. By 7:05 a.m., Julius sat alone in his home office overlooking the river, a second espresso cooling beside untouched toast, while notification chimes pinged across 3 monitors. Overnight, market pundits had spun North River's capitulation clause into headlines. Grant blinks, merger on shaky water, and dock deal delays profits. But what worried him more were the private messages. Directors of subsidiary boards, hedge fund partners who described the hybrid plan as charitable malpractice, threats of proxy raids delivered in the sanitized phrasing of corporate counsel. 27 voicemails stacked in his queue. The angriest belonged to Harriet Coe. "You have 48 hours to issue a clarifying statement," she had barked at 1:12 a.m. "Reverse the clause, or the compensation committee reopens your contract." Julius replayed the recording twice, studying inflections, but a knock on the door spared him a third run. His executive assistant, Marcella Kemp, hovered in the doorway holding a manila envelope. 48 years old, ex-military logistics, Marcella rarely showed emotion. Today, her jaw was tight. "Courier dropped this 15 minutes ago," she said. "No return address. Security screened it." Julius slit the seal. Inside lay a single photograph. Danielle standing on Pier 32 at dawn, brush in hand, hair in braids, her image framed through a scope's crosshairs, the targeting reticle unmistakable. No signature, no demand, just a timestamp in one corner, 05:37 a.m., yesterday. The espresso cup shattered against hardwood before Julius realized his hand had twitched. Marcella rushed forward, but he waved her back. He sucked a breath, forcing blood to limbs that tingled with sudden ice. "Get Carter," he said. "Union Security Chief. Tell him Danielle Brooks is priority one. Then call Detective Figueroa, Internal Affairs Liaison. And Marcella," his voice cracked like a hatch in gale wind, "find out if Danielle's safe." Danielle was not on Pier 32. She was 3 miles inland, in a windowless warehouse that served as the dock workers' cultural annex, standing atop scaffolding rolling indigo across a community mural depicting the harbor under starlight. She had headphones in, Coltrane on low volume, and failed to notice her phone vibrating on a paint-splattered crate until the 6th call. When she answered, Ramirez's gravelly voice cut through. "Brooks, get inside. CEO's command center just flagged a threat." She laughed, short, incredulous. "Ramirez? I'm already inside. Been here since 5. "It's serious," he insisted. "We're en route." She stared at her unfinished night sky, the roller-dripping beads that burst on concrete. Threats were rumors in her world, rent hikes, utility shutoffs, but rarely violence. Still, Ramirez's tone welded memory to bone. She climbed down, locked the annex door, and sat among paint cans while distant sirens breached morning hush. Harriet Coe paced the length of her penthouse library, phone pressed to ear. Cherry shelves held first editions of maritime law volumes, but today their order did not soothe her. On speaker, North River's original CEO argued for patience. "Haul Julius into committee," he urged. "Make him sweat. No shareholder revolt during final integration." Harriet stared through cathedral windows at the harbor. Patience is what dock workers plead for while their children pack lunches. "We promised Wall Street 34% EBITDA growth. If Grant thinks he can ransom us for blue-collar goodwill..." A chime signaled another call. She pressed a key. "Speak." A digitized voice answered, masked, untraceable. "You wanted leverage. We delivered a photograph." Harriet's pulse thudded. "The painter? I said pressure, not threat. That step was premature." "Step 2 awaits your approval," the voice replied. "Silence her. Lose the union's backbone. Grant folds." Harriet glanced at a framed photo of herself christening a container ship, champagne spray frozen midair. Beneath the glass, the ship's name, Harriet C., blurred under her breath. "No fatalities. We ruin deals, not lives." "As you wish," said the voice, tone unreadable. The line clicked dead. Harriet exhaled. Even monsters, she thought, pretend to set boundaries. At Crescent City PD, Detective Lucas Figueroa massaged circles over migraine temples while Julius reeled off details. Photograph, timestamp, merger blowback. Lucas had seen corporate intimidation metamorphose into violence. Too often, civil suits came after a widow's tears. He keyed dispatch, protective detail to Danielle's warehouse, patrol cars near her family's apartment, Julius's penthouse, Pier 32. "Who else knows?" he asked. "Marcella? Union heads? Danielle if Ramirez reached her?" Lucas frowned. Loose lips invite copycats, but Julius's concern burned real. The man's tie sat askew, espresso stain darkening starched cuff. "We'll find the photographer," Lucas promised. "But you have to decide who frightens you more, anonymous shooters or shareholders with lawyers. Step carefully." Julius eyed the fluorescent ceiling, as if mapping constellations through plaster. "If shareholders want a war," he murmured, "I'll choose my battleground." He pulled out his phone. Time to talk to newspapers. Crescent Chronicle editor Maya Lang received Julius's op-ed pitch before noon. Automation is only as good as the stories it serves. She skimmed phrases, haunted harbors, hybrid logistics, moral ROI, then called Julius directly. "You sure?" she asked. "You sign this? Stock may tumble before closing bell?" "Truth withstands turbulence," he replied. She exhaled, stirred by his earnest crisis. "We'll run it tomorrow." He thanked her and ended the call. Another message pinged. Danielle, safe with Ramirez. Enough people worried. Paint can wait. Relief uncoiled in his shoulders. He typed back, relief, but paint never waits. It keeps time the way hearts do, no send. He deleted the line, typed instead, glad you're safe. We'll brief you later. Then JG, formal, shielded. By 4 p.m., Harriet maneuvered through private elevators to the Meridian Center's crisis suite. 4 directors awaited, screens displaying after-hours trades bleeding red. Harriet spoke in clipped syllables. Op-ed hits newsstands at dawn. Proxy factions already marshalling. We need a scapegoat. We reframe this fiasco as Grant's midlife epiphany. Unstable, impulsive. She slid a folder across the glass table. Inside, photos of him descending to the loading docks mid-gala. Gossip fodder. We leak that he's entangled with a dockside muralist. Investors will question judgment. A director raised an eyebrow. If they think he's fraternizing with labor activists, we might tip votes in our favor. Harriet smiled without mirth. Perception is cheaper than sabotage. Morning found Danielle back at the mural annex, but the mood was altered. 2 uniformed officers stood guard. Ramirez slept in a folding chair, and Julius arrived carrying bagels and a newspaper. The Chronicle front page blared, Grant defies Wall Street, hybrid hope or CEO breakdown. Subheader, sources hint at mysterious dockside muse. A smaller photograph showed Danielle's mural beneath chandeliers. Someone had snapped it during the board meeting. She glared at Julius. Muse? Really? I didn't plant that, he said. Harriet's spin, likely. Danielle peeled off paint-flecked gloves. Your crisis paints me target red. My sister's nursing class already buzzing, bank rumors, sugar daddies, whatever sells. Guilt knifed him. He set the bagels on a workbench. I'll hold a press statement. Clarify. She crossed arms. Tell them what? That the CEO seeks redemption via local artist? Stories swallow nuance. He watched her chest rise, fall, controlled anger disguised as composure. Then we give them a new story, authored by us. Us, she echoed, tone wary. He spread the newspaper across the bench, flattening creases. Tomorrow night, North River shareholders meet for preliminary vote on revised deal. I want you, Ramirez, Carter, Doc families in the auditorium, live streamed. Let them see faces automation erases. Her gaze softened slightly. And if they prefer erasure? Then they vote overtly against faces, not hidden behind algorithms. She studied him, creased brows, sleepless eyes, tie askew again. Brave, she said, or foolish. Sometimes synonyms, he replied. She inhaled. All right, but I set my own stage. We unveil the harbor mural on site, projected full height of the auditorium. Ghost Cargo becomes panel 1 of a triptych. I'll finish the second tonight. What's panel 3? You'll paint it, she said, almost teasing. His laugh emerged, startled. I paint spreadsheets, not skylines. Perfect. The finale needs raw discomfort. She pivoted back to scaffolding. Now let me work. Fear can't prime brushes. Only purpose can. Julius lingered, wanting to apologize for headlines, for crosshairs, words jammed behind caution. He left quietly, pocketing a single blueberry bagel for the road. Harriet's counterplay unfurled as dusk settled. Anonymous tips reached financial blogs. Julius's dockside muse received insider advantages, painting contracts from his foundation, potential conflict of interest. Photos of them on the pier spread across socials. Commodity traders shorted Grant logistics. By midnight, Danielle's social accounts, rarely used, burst with threats and slurs, her inbox flooded with commie grifter accusations. She muted notifications, rolled paint onto the second panel, a sunrise crane morphing into an upraised human arm, veins rendered as shipping lanes. Each stroke pushed fear aside. Color answered hate. Around 2, her sister Alana called from the nurse's dorm, voice trembling. "Some guy tried to leave a package for you at reception. Security chased him off." Danielle's roller froze mid-arc. She pictured the crosshair photo. "I'll handle it," she soothed. "Stay inside. Call Officer Green. He's on the detail." Click. Silence. She leaned against cold concrete, breath hot with protectiveness. On the scaffold, the sunrise waited for its horizon line. Danielle pressed roller to canvas, drew a deliberate scarlet line between sea and sky. Shareholder meeting day dawned under low clouds. Julius rehearsed remarks in the executive washroom mirror, but his eyes tracked a different script. Worry lines Danielle's brush could not erase. He touched his lapel where a pin used to sit. Company crest. He left it off. Downstairs, Harriet cornered him. "You're trending as the eccentric savior. Investors hate eccentric. Pull this spectacle, you won't hold the gavel." He faced her calmly. "If leadership depends on staying silent about people's lives, I'll drop the gavel myself." She appraised him, nostrils flaring. "You were a promising hawk once." "Hawks can learn new routes," he replied, stepping past. The auditorium filled, press on risers, shareholders fanning prospectuses, dock workers in union jackets. Danielle's triptych, projected floor to ceiling, commanded the back wall. Panel 1, Ghost Cargo. Panel 2, Dawn of the Lift. Panel 3, blank charcoal canvas with Julius's name scrawled at bottom. Whispers rustled, rumor of CEO performance art. Julius took the stage, breath steady. "I stand before you not as an oracle of quarterly returns," he began, "but as steward of a network older than this corporation. Trade itself. Trade thrives on trust. Trust erodes when profit ignores the hands that hoist its cargo." He gestured to Panel 1. "This is what neglect looks like." Panel 2. "This what partnership can look like." He faced the charcoal canvas. "And this as yet untitled piece. This is what the future demands. Leadership willing to draw the first honest line." He picked up a piece of chalk Danielle had placed on a stool. The hall hushed. Julius approached the canvas, heart hammering. He drew a line, crooked, uncertain, across the blank. Chalk dust drifted like ash. Then he passed the chalk to Ramirez, who scrawled a dock crane, fluid and sure. Carter added a clenched fist, becoming a gear. A dockworker's child, coaxed on stage, drew a tiny boat near the fist. Applause swelled. Danielle joined last, rendering a sunrise that swallowed their lines into a single horizon. When she stepped back, the improvised mural pulsed with life, raw, imperfect, undeniably human. Harriet watched, stone-faced. Some shareholders shifted, uneasy. Others, unexpectedly, clapped. Julius returned to the podium. "Vote as you choose, but know you are voting with eyes open. No ghosts, only stories." Electronic ballots pinged. Result: hybrid deal approved. 61% in favor. Cheers erupted from union rows. As cameras flashed, Julius looked to Danielle. She nodded, a small salute. 2 hours later, Detective Figueroa rang Julius's mobile. "We traced the crosshair photo to a private security firm, subcontractor of Co-Maritime Holdings. Warrants served. Harriet's office under search." Julius leaned against backstage curtains, stomach cold. "Arrests?" "One so far. More likely. Keep your guard. Cornered Investors Act rash." He ended the call, scanning the empty stage where chalk still dusted the air. Night cloaked the harbor. Danielle locked the annex, mural complete. Footsteps approached. Harriet, alone, designer heels clicking like small condemning hammers. Danielle stiffened but did not retreat. "I underestimated you," Harriet said, voice taut. "Grant too, but this tide turns." Danielle met her gaze. "Low tides show rotten pilings." Harriet's lip twitched. "You think art wins wars? Art decorates victory. It never decides it." Tonight proved otherwise. Harriet's eyes glinted. "Victory tonight. Tomorrow? Markets kneecap ideals, investors forget murals. She handed Danielle a rolled blueprint. North River's board still plans inland megahub. Hybrid clause leaves loophole. They can move cargo off dock in 3 years, after elections, after PR fades. She stepped back. Call it a farewell gift. Use it if you wish. Danielle unrolled the blueprint under streetlight. Schematics of a landlocked smart port, fully automated. She looked up, but Harriet had vanished into fog. At the pier, Julius waited, leaning on railing, moon painting silver tracks across black water. Danielle approached, blueprint tucked beneath her arm. "Congratulations," she said. "Shared," he answered. She unrolled the blueprint between them. "Harriet gave me tomorrow's battle." He studied it, jaw setting. "So the war continues." Danielle folded the paper. "Art's just begun." He offered a weary smile. "Then let's keep painting." Across the harbor, cranes slept, unaware of the stories soon to rise with the tide. The blueprint weighed on Danielle's lap like a prophecy of betrayal as Julius guided his vintage electric roadster along the elevated expressway toward the industrial district. Pre-dawn haze smeared the headlights of cargo vans into pale comets, and neither of them had spoken since leaving the pier. It was Julius who finally broke the silence, his fingers drumming the steering wheel in a syncopated rhythm only he could decipher. "I can pressure test that loophole," he said. "Rewrite the hybrid clause to lock them in for a decade." Danielle traced the dotted lines on the blueprint, following the conveyor tracks that ran inland like veins toward a skeleton-gray estate labeled Dryport Omega. "A loophole isn't a drafting error," she answered. "It's an escape hatch someone designed on purpose. They'll close one door while architects are building 3 more down the hall." Julius winced at the truth of it. He had insisted on the 5-year moratorium, thinking it a shield. Harriet and her allies had drawn an invisible map around the shield, already plotting the siege. "We need leverage," he murmured. "Proof that Dryport Omega violates coastal emission covenants or drains municipal subsidies?" "Evidence might slow them," Danielle interrupted, folding the blueprint. "But stories stop them. We show what inland mega-automation looks like before it happens. Turn the blueprint into a cautionary mural." He slowed at a red light, glancing at her. "You would paint the future?" "I'd paint the future they pray stays unseen." A horn blared behind them. Julius accelerated through the intersection. He could almost picture the mural. Rows of automated cranes lifting containers into a sky stripped of dockworker voices, a silent empire of algorithms. The thought tightened his throat. They reached the downtown Union Hall by 6 a.m. Inside, Dockmaster Ramirez poured bitter coffee into foam cups, while Union Steward Carter annotated budget spreadsheets for training programs. News of Harriet's blueprint had reached them during the night via encrypted message groups. Half the hall buzzed with talk of injunctions and early warning campaigns. Ramirez looked up as Julius and Danielle entered, eyes puffy but alert. "Dryport Omega," he greeted, sliding a document across the table. "Original permit filed 2 months ago under shell company Ectalon Holdings. They claimed it was a recycling logistics hub. No public hearings yet, but the land's zoned industrial." Julius scanned the permit. "Owned by a trust headquartered in Nassau. That's Harriet's style. Bury the paper trail 6 contingencies deep." Carter cracked his knuckles. "We can protest flood council meetings, but they'll wait us out. We need broader allies, environmental coalitions, inland trucking guilds who'll lose contracts." Danielle unrolled the blueprint for them. "And we need eyes. Let people see what's coming in color and scale they can't ignore." Ramirez nodded. "You still got that abandoned grain silo by Maple Yards? 10 stories tall, visible from the freeway, make it your canvas?" Carter whistled. "City will cite us for trespass." "After the mural's up," Ramirez replied, "the citation will only amplify coverage." Julius felt simultaneous dread and exhilaration. "I'll bankroll supplies, lighting, drone footage, silent donation." Danielle smiled. the expression carrying gratitude and melancholy together. "Silent donations don't stay silent long, Julius." "I'll survive the noise," he said. Noise arrived sooner than expected. By mid-morning, shares of Grant Logistics seesawed under rumors of CEO misconduct. Financial talk shows replayed drone footage of Julius chalking the impromptu mural, labeling it boardroom theatrics. Commentators speculated about Harriet mounting a no-confidence vote. One anchor suggested Julius's emotional dalliance with a dockside artist imperiled shareholder value. The phrase stung. Julius threw his remote at the television, cracking the corner of the screen. Marcella entered with 2 laptops under her arm. "Crisis simulation models," she announced. "Social sentiment split. Younger investors laud the hybrid deal, pension funds skew negative, and Co-Maritime just filed a civil complaint alleging breach of fiduciary duty." Julius rubbed his temples. "We'll fight it." Filing also includes a restraining order attempt, bar you from influencing corporate decisions until an emergency hearing. She placed a printed packet on his desk. "Harriet wants you muzzled." Julius stared at the legal jargon. "A muzzle on leadership is a muzzle on accountability." He looked up. "Schedule a press briefing at noon. We'll preempt the narrative." "Already booked," Marcella replied, slight smile betraying pride. Danielle climbed the rusted fire escape of the Maple Yard silo, wind rattling loose sheet metal like snare drums. From the top landing she surveyed the city, harbor cranes to the east, skyline glinting south, freight rail weaving north toward the farmland Harriet intended to reforge into an automated empire. The silo wall offered an unobstructed face 60 feet high, sun-bleached concrete begging for pigment. She chalked a grid, measuring proportions. Beside her, apprentice artists, students from the harbor's vocational school, opened crates of eco-paint Julius had rush-ordered. Each wore harness and helmet, excitement eclipsing fear. She explained the concept. First panel, harbor under twilight, mirroring ghost cargo. Second, present-day hybrid cranes and human hands. Third, projected inland dystopia, titled Machinery of Absence. "We paint left to right," she instructed. "Workers past, present, potential future. If Dryport Omega breaks ground, we'll add Phase 4, reclamation." The apprentices nodded, laptops ready with reference renders Danielle had sketched overnight. Below, Ramirez organized spotlights for night work. Union volunteers erected scaffolds. A local food truck arrived, donating coffee and empanadas. The silo became a hive of collective intent. Danielle clipped herself to a harness, dipped a roller in midnight blue, and touched the concrete. The first stroke felt like an oath. Harriet watched the noon press conference on her office projector. Julius stood at a podium flanked by union representatives and the city's deputy environmental commissioner. His voice carried unwavering clarity. "Our revised merger terms reflect an ethos. Efficiency cannot cannibalize community. I welcome shareholder scrutiny. I reject intimidation tactics. Regarding rumors of personal misconduct, I have no regrets forming alliances with citizens whose artistry and labor anchor this harbor's identity. Leadership without humanity is just arithmetic." Reporters fired questions. "What about Dryport Omega?" Julius pivoted. "No inland hub will proceed without full environmental review and workforce transition plans." Another question. "Co-Maritime claims you jeopardize profits." Julius. "Profit built on broken promises bankrupts trust." Harriet clenched her glass of mineral water so hard it cracked. Directors texting her demanded escalation. Legal counsel warned that Julius's stance galvanized public sentiment. Yet the more she watched, the more Harriet felt a grudging admiration fuse with a deeper resentment. She had molded Julius's early swagger, mentored his risk tolerance. Now he wielded charisma against her strategies. Loyalty, she mused, was rarer than debt, and he'd chosen allegiance to strangers with paintbrushes. Her private line buzzed. The digitized voice again. "Step 2 incomplete. it intoned. Your hesitation undermined momentum. Harriet's tone chilled. Further violence threatens everything. Back off. Phase 3 proceeds regardless, the voice replied. Investor war demands collateral. The line died. Harriet stared at the blank screen, heart thrumming like an alarm she could not locate. Afternoon sunlight slanted across the silo, igniting pigments into stained glass brilliance. Motorists slowed on the expressway, photographing the blossoming mural and posting to Chush Harbor Stories, a hashtag trending nationwide. News helicopters hovered. Danielle switched from roller to detail brush, outlining a dock worker's profile inside a metallic crane cab, her strokes quick but meticulous. Her phone vibrated, a blocked caller ID. She ignored it. It vibrated again. Same ID. She answered, breath shallow. Silence. Then Alana's recorded voice. Sis, I'm heading to study group. Meet you later. A click. A man's voice layered over the recording. Beautiful mural, Miss Brooks. Imagine how it looks when ash drifts across the paint. The call ended. Ice slithered down Danielle's spine. She peered at the street below. No suspicious vehicle, only spectators and union guards. She descended the scaffold, found Ramirez. We need extra eyes on my sister at campus dorms. Threats escalating. Ramirez barked instructions into his walkie-talkie. Danielle's hands trembled minutely. She flexed them, returning to the wall. Fear, she reminded herself, cannot prime brushes. Purpose can. Crescent Chronicle's evening edition splashed a drone photograph of the silo mural across its front page. Artists, dockers rise against megahub. Editorial pundits labeled it the Great Harbor Awakening. Union membership inquiries spiked. City councilors sent supportive tweets. The movement gained story momentum Harriet struggled to counter. She convened an emergency board teleconference. Some directors urged compromise. Others pressed for Julius's ouster. The lawyer detailed the civil case timeline. Best outcome 6 months, shareholder patience thin. Harriet's jaw ached from clenching. We cut the head, she said. File a motion to freeze his voting shares, claim conflict of interest, deploy PR cannons painting him reckless. She swallowed bitterness. And authorize lobbying to fast-track dry port Omega permits before sentiment shifts. Night draped the silo. Portable floodlights bathed the mural. Hundreds gathered, dock workers, artists, families, students, to watch the final strokes. Folk musicians played at the base, their melodies weaving into the hiss of spray cans. Julius arrived in rolled-up sleeves, chalk dust still lingering in his hair from morning media stops. Danielle descended to greet him, fatigue rimmed by adrenaline. I brought supplies, he said, presenting a box. Glow-in-the-dark pigments, biodegradable drones for aerial time-lapse, and a thermos of ginger tea. She laughed softly, tension easing. You keep this up, I'll start billing you as project manager. He looked up at the mural's third panel, half finished. Automated cranes shaped like skeletal hands, containers stamped with binary code, a horizon bleached of sunrise. It's horrifying, he whispered. Hold the brush, she offered. Add the first sign of hope. Julius hesitated. She dipped a small brush in phosphorescent teal, pressed it into his hand. Up there, she pointed at a blank corridor between cranes. Draw what redemption might look like. Guided by harness and Danielle's steadying palm, Julius climbed midway. Under breath held tight, he painted a faint line, a river of light winding through the machine maze toward open water. Imperfect, shaky. But when the floodlights dimmed momentarily, the teal glowed, a ribbon of promise against the dystopian frame. Cheers erupted below. Julius laughed, relief flooding cheeks. He descended, heart-pumping childhood exhilaration. Danielle clapped once, genuine. Art forgives crooked, she told him. It asks only for sincerity. He handed back the brush. Then it's in forgiving company. In a dark sedan parked 2 blocks south, A man in a ballistic vest watched through binoculars. His earpiece crackled. Phase 3. Negative on clear shot. Crowd density high. Copy, he muttered. Await further. He snapped a photo through a high-resolution lens. Julius and Danielle, paint-streaked, standing shoulder to shoulder before the glowing mural. He sent the image to an encrypted channel. Reply, continue observation, target vector shifting to leverage via sibling. The man checked his watch. Midnight soon. He started the engine, blending into traffic. Campus security footage captured Alana Brooks leaving the dorm at 11:18 p.m., tote bag slung over shoulder, earbuds in. At 11:22, a black delivery van idled near the rear gate. Motion sensors recorded two figures stepping out, one offering a clipboard, the other guiding Alana toward the van. The gate camera glitched, static flood, for 4 seconds. When feed resumed, the van was gone. Danielle's phone rang at 12:03 a.m., campus security. We're doing rounds, noticed your sister's door open, lights on, but she's not listed as signed out. Danielle's pulse spiked. She phoned Alana, no answer. She tried again. Voicemail. She grabbed her jacket, yelling for Ramirez. Julius intercepted her halfway down the scaffold stairs. What is it? My sister. Breath ragged. Missing. Detective Figueroa answered Julius's 1 a.m. call from the precinct evidence room. Amber alert incoming, Julius said. Alana Brooks abducted. Lucas cursed quietly, instructing analysts to pull city traffic cams. Pattern matches the van from crosshair photo case, he told officers. Suspect escalation to kidnapping. Within minutes, statewide alerts flashed. Bolo. Black delivery van. Partial plate 6XT. But the van had swapped plates twice and entered the Beltway tunnel southbound, surveillance gaps swallowing it whole. Harriet's penthouse phone rang at 1:37 a.m. The digitized voice. Package secured, awaiting directive. Harriet's hand trembled. You took a nurse. This isn't leverage, it's lunacy. Leverage defines parameters of compliance, the voice replied. Grant will fold within 48 hours or the muralist's sister is merchandise. Harriet's breath hitched. Release her. Find another angle. Too late. Dominoes topple once pushed. The call ended, leaving Harriet facing her city through glass 300 feet high, reflection fractured by guilt she could no longer rationalize. 2 a.m., Julius convened crisis command in his penthouse. Detective Figueroa, Ramirez, Carter, Marcella, tech consultants from Julius's cybersecurity team. Danielle paced like a caged panther, blueprint clenched in fist. Lucas spread satellite maps. Van likely headed toward decommissioned sugar refinery near Riverbend, isolated, easy access to rail spur. Julius locked eyes with Danielle. We'll find her. Danielle's voice was ice. I'm coming. Ramirez objected. Julius overruled. She knows the refinery's maze, painted it last year for a community exhibit. Lucas armed a tactical unit. Julius insisted on joining. Protocol protested, but Lucas saw resolve. They geared up. Kevlar vests, comm headsets, Julius trading cufflinks for a flashlight and first aid kit. As SUVs sped through deserted streets, Danielle stared out the window, mural lights receding behind skyscrapers. Fear coiled, but purpose steadied her spine. She whispered a vow. Colors would not dim tonight. At 3:12 a.m., the convoy reached the Riverbend refinery, rusted silos looming like time-worn titans against flickering stars. SWAT advanced, scanning for heat signatures. They identified the van near a loading bay, engine warm. Inside, 2 guards, unconscious, chloroformed. No sign of Alana. Gunmetal clouds drifted overhead. Lucas checked thermal feed, 2 bodies deeper in the refinery's conveyor corridor. The team split, Alpha flank west, Bravo east. Danielle slipped between Alpha agents, guiding them through graffiti-tagged catwalks she once photographed for texture studies. Cries echoed, muffled, desperate. Lucas signaled. Agents breached a rusted door, flashbang disorienting shadows. In a warehouse lit by a single flood lamp, Alana sat bound to a chair, duct tape across mouth, eyes wide. Beside her, a timer counted down on a small explosive. 4:58, 4:57. Julius's blood iced. Danielle sprinted, ripping off tape. Alana sobbed relief. Ramirez cut bindings. Lucas called bomb squad. Minutes away. The timer blinked. 4:41. Julius scanned the device. Crude but lethal. Shrapnel jacketed. "We carry her out," he said. "Bomb squad over comm. Moving will trigger secondary tilt switch." "Disarm," Lucas ordered into mic. "Need disarm code," crackled response, "or manual 5-wire sequence." Julius knelt. 5 color-coded wires. Red, white, blue, green, yellow. Typical decoy pattern. Danielle's eyes locked on colors. "Opposite of the harbor flag," she murmured. "The local dock flag order: blue, white, green, yellow, red. Cut reverse sequence, it's Harriet's signature, mirrors turned inside out." Julius's hand hovered. Lucas nodded. "No better lead." Timer 3:59. Julius exhaled, sliced red first using multi-tool. Beep escalated. Timer jumped to 1 phase, fail-safe. Danielle's pulse thundered. Lucas swore. Julius froze. Alana whispered hoarsely, "Back of device, panel." Julius flipped unit, a 6-digit keypad blinking 0054. He remembered Harriet's ship christening photo, the one in her library. Name, Harriet C. Ship ID, HC 1978. He typed 19786C, invalid, AL0039. Danielle grabbed his hand, steady. 50 years since Harbor Union Charter, 1975. Try 1975 HC. Digits beeped. Timer stopped at 0011. Silence. Breath released in unison. Bomb squad arrived seconds later, securing device. Paramedics attended Alana. Danielle pulled her sister into an embrace so tight it hurt. Julius stepped back, knees weak. Lucas eyed him. "Harriet's games escalate to terrorism. We nail her." Dawn's first gray light found Harriet in her office, pouring bourbon into tea despite the hour. Police sirens rose distant. She glanced at the chessboard on her desk, mid-game frozen, her queen pinned by rooks. The city she sought to command now gathered to prosecute her. She dialed the digitized number, no ring, line dead. Her allies cut ties faster than markets cut losses. A knock rattled glass doors. Federal marshals entered, badges raised. Harriet smoothed her blazer, shoulders regal. "I presume you have a warrant." "For conspiracy, kidnapping, attempted murder," the marshal replied. Harriet exhaled once, then extended her wrists. Manners before manacles. Union Hall overflowed that evening. Dock workers, artists, journalists, students, elected officials. Julius stood beside Danielle and Alana, both exhausted yet unbroken. Lucas announced Harriet's arrest, evidence linking her to private security mercenaries, the bombing, and embezzlement. Cheers thundered, grief intertwined with vindication. Julius raised his voice. "The harbor belongs to every hand that shapes it. We rebuild trust with transparency, art, labor, and leadership answerable to both." Applause roared. Danielle unveiled the finished mural's final stroke, a second teal river branching from Julius's line, drawn by Alana. 2 ribbons of light converging at horizon. Ramirez wiped a tear. Carter led a chant. Cranes and hands. One harbor. The hall echoed, walls alive with sound. Julius turned to Danielle. "You said art forgives crooked. Today, art saved lives." She squeezed his paint-stained fingers. "Tomorrow it shapes them." Outside, harbor cranes awakened under sunset glow. Neither ghosts nor algorithms ruled the sky, only stories newly written, awaiting dawn. 2 weeks after Harriet Coe's arrest, Crescent City awoke to a bay slicked with copper dawn and the faint odor of upheaval. Barges hummed upriver carrying commodities rerouted from ports that now refused service to companies implicated in the kidnapping plot. The Chronicle printed a running ticker of global affiliates abruptly severing ties with Co Maritime Holdings and every newsroom Chiron pulsed with numbers bleeding red. Yet, on the waterfront itself, laughter crackled like sparks. Dock workers greeted one another with raised coffee thermoses and back slaps that felt heavier, yes, but also freer, as though each palm confirmed that the hands it landed upon were still alive. Inside a temporary command suite carved from a disused customs office, Julius Grant studied a wall-length map crowded with color pins: green for allies, amber for undecided partners, crimson for hostile factions. Sleep hung under his eyes like bruises, but his posture radiated a tempered fire. Across the table, Marcella Kemp delivered the morning brief with the calm cadence of a church bell. "Share price down 9% since the press conference," she said, sliding tablets toward Julius and Danielle, who sat beside him in paint-flecked cargo pants and a blazer borrowed from her sister. However, ESG-aligned investment funds added 2.7% to their positions. Sentiment analysis indicates shift from volatile to transformative. The street calls it Grant Logistics Reconstruction Era. Julius exhaled. Reconstruction never comes cheap. He looked to Danielle, whose fingers tapped a staccato on the coffee cup. "You okay?" She nodded, though the tremor in her foot belied calm. Alana had returned to nursing classes with security detail in tow, but nightmares persisted. Echoes of duct tape ripping from skin, timer digits winking down. Danielle funneled worry into paint. 2 new murals in progress, one at the Children's Hospital, another on a commuter bridge where gray steel begged for hope. "Today matters," Danielle said, lifting her gaze to the green pins clustered around the Pier District. "If the City Council approves the Harbor Heritage Overlay, you freeze Dryport Omega for good." "Council's split 5-4, Marcella added. "We hold 3 votes solid, 2 leaning, 4 leaning the other way. Public comment starts at 10 a.m. Opposition will flood speakers' list with economic collapse rhetoric." Julius glanced at his watch. "Then let's give them economics they can't ignore." City Hall's council chamber resembled a repurposed cathedral, high-arched windows, stained glass skylights that turned morning sun into kaleidoscopic shards. Rows of citizens filled pew-like benches, dock families in union blue, tech workers in hoodies, gallery owners sporting paint-daubed scarves. At the chamber's rear, brokerage analysts typed forecasts from fold-out stools while cameras from national networks panned the crowd. Council President Mireya Wallace, a sharp-eyed former prosecutor, called the session to order. Agenda Item 3. Harbor Heritage Overlay Act, a zoning guardrail that would forbid large-scale automation projects without community labor accords and environmental remediation plans. Proponents said it would safeguard livelihoods. Detractors warned it would scare away billions in private investment. The first speaker against the bill, a lobbyist draped in a charcoal suit, brandished charts predicting 15,000 lost jobs if the overlay passed. Julius, seated 2 rows back, recognized the same inflated numbers Harriet had once weaponized. Danielle, at his side, whispered, "He ignores hybrid metrics, calls every robot a pink slip." When Ramirez took the podium, the room's timbre shifted. He placed a battered hard hat on the lectern. 41 years, he began, voice gravel thick. "That's how long I've waited for a council to ask what progress means to the people inside the cranes." He described losing co-workers to crushed limbs, heat stroke, corporate indifference. "We're not anti-technology," he said. "We're anti-vanishing." Applause thundered. Wallace's gavel restored decorum but not silence. The applause lingered like a heartbeat. Next came an environmental scientist who presented satellite heat map models showing Dryport Omega's inland emissions plume drifting directly over 2 elementary schools. Then a high school senior, daughter of a laid-off warehouse packer, recited her poem Binary Cargo, lines braided from code snippets and lullaby fragments until several council members wiped eyes. Opponents countered with economists and freight consultants. One claimed the overlay would push cargo to rival ports in Pacifica Bay. Julius shot Marcella a look. She nodded and forwarded a study to each council member's tablet. Pacifica's port just signed its own heritage accord after a public health lawsuit. The consultant stammered when Wallace asked him about it. As afternoon sun steeped the chamber in amber, Danielle approached the podium. She unrolled a canvas no larger than a shoebox lid, a miniature of ghost cargo rendered on scrap sailcloth. She set it between two microphones and spoke softly. Machines move goods, stories move souls. A city that forgets its soul becomes a machine that no longer feeds itself, only grinds. She gestured to specters within the paint. I painted these ghosts so my sister wouldn't become one. She paused, eyes sweeping from council to balcony. Vote yes, and we build with memory intact. Vote no, and the ghosts stay hungry. Silence so whole it shimmered. Council called recess. Julius stepped into the marble atrium, pulse-drumming temples. Lobbyists huddled in corners, concocting last-ditch spin. Council member Adrian Coles, one of the fence-sitters, emerged, head bowed over his phone. Julius intercepted him. "Mr. Coles," Julius said, offering a bottle of water. "I know investors blow your line with doomsday predictions. Here are numbers they skip." He handed Coles a single sheet. Hybrid port pilot program projections. Productivity unchanged, error rates down 12%, local household spending up 10 million annually. "Fear sells," Julius continued, "but facts compound." Coles studied the sheet. "Automation lobby funds my next campaign. Dock workers fund block parties." Julius smiled, weary but earnest. "Which constituency wakes at 4 a.m. to detail your city bus campaign ads?" Coles exhaled, tension easing. "Your board will fight you. Boardrooms are replaceable, communities aren't." Julius extended his hand. Coles clasped it, tentative but real. Council reconvened. Wallace's gavel cracked. Roll call vote. Council member Reyes. Aye. Council member Whitaker. No. Council member Coles. Eyes flicked to Julius, to the canvas ghost on the clerk's desk. Aye. 6 votes in. The tally balanced at 4-2. 2 remained. Council member Ortega, a centrist wary of payroll losses, and Wallace herself. Ortega leaned to microphone. "I vote!" A pause stretched, tension strung to snapping. "Aye." Gasps rippled. Wallace straightened. "The count stands 5 affirmative, 2 negative, with 1 vote remaining. As council president, I—" She surveyed the chamber. Muralists' eyes, union faces, lobby suits now paling. "Cast my vote in favor. Motion carries." Cheering drowned the marble. Julius felt his knees threaten to buckle. Danielle clasped his wrist, grounding him. Ramirez lifted his hard hat in salute. Carter whooped a victory so thunderous pigeons burst from the courthouse eaves. Outside, cameras swarmed, reporters firing questions. "Mr. Grant, investors say you've turned activist. Is this the new capitalism?" Julius reflected a beat, then answered, "It's the old capitalism, one that remembers capital includes human capital." Danielle laughed softly. "You're learning rhetoric." "Learning humility," he corrected. That night, the waterfront held a celebration bonfire on a gravel spit by Dock 14. Food trucks circled, guitars strummed, children chased each other between spools of rope repurposed as picnic tables. Julius arrived solo, no security detail. The crowd made space for him the way a tide carves its own berth. He carried a box of bakery cupcakes decorated with teal ribbons, handing them out like peace offerings. Danielle sat on a battered bench, legs swinging, watching the flames paint cranes orange. Julius joined, handing her a cupcake. "Council victory tastes like sugar?" "Tastes like borrowed time," she answered, nibbling icing. "Coalitions hold while fear's fresh. Memory fades." He nodded. "Then we immortalize it." He produced from his coat pocket a folded memorandum. Grant Logistics would donate 10% of merger synergies to a harbor story fund. Annual grants for artist-labor collaborations, scholarship endowments, and independent watchdog audits. Board signatories listed below, Harriet's name absent. Danielle's brows lifted. They agreed? Wasn't optional, Julius said. Shareholder resolution forced the vote. Majority saw brand value in redemption. She laid a hand on the page. Brand value, she echoed, teasing but grateful. Whatever sells hope. Across the bonfire glow, Alana chatted with her nursing classmates, laughter close to genuine. Julius watched the sisters share a thumbs up and felt the finch in his chest migrate at last. No frantic wing beats, only quiet certainty. A hush fell as musicians shifted to a slow ballad. Julius stood, extended a hand to Danielle. May I? She eyed his polished shoes. You waltz on gravel? I improvise. They moved near the fire's rim, feet crunching pebbles, bodies swaying in imperfect rhythm. Sparks shot upward, joining stars. For the first time since their cafe encounter, there was no negotiation between them, only motion. Ramirez lifted a phone, snapping a photo, no crosshair, just two silhouettes beneath cranes reborn in firelight. He texted it to Marcella with caption, Harbor ghosted, humans win. But 3 miles inland, at a shuttered warehouse along the rail spur, the digitized voice convened a new circle. Corporate operatives from rival freight conglomerates, firms untouched by Harriet's downfall, watched simulated profit projections slash back to pre-automation levels. The voice distilled fury into a plan. If Crescent City's overlay became national precedent, margins shrank industry-wide. Contain the contagion, it hissed through speakers. Screens displayed Danielle's murals, Julius's op-ed quotes, council vote tallies. One operative muttered, Heroes make easy martyrs. Another suggested cyber sabotage, cripple harbor ops, and blame hybrid inefficiency. A third produced a dossier, Julius's daily schedule, the muralists' union events, vulnerabilities in the Harbor Story Fund's payment chain. The voice concluded, Phase 4, perception collapse, begin tomorrow. At dawn, while Danielle rinsed brushes in the annex sink, her phone buzzed. Unknown sender, one-line message, Art bleeds like numbers. Watch the water. She stepped outside. In the canal behind the warehouse, rainbow swirls of diesel leaked, drifting toward storm drains feeding the bay. Floating atop the slick, dozens of teal-painted paper cranes, miniature replicas of Julius's Hope Line, each soaked in fuel, unfolding into ruin. Fear pricked her skin anew, but fury rose faster. She photographed the scene, sent it to Julius, Ramirez, Lucas, and Marcella with caption, Phase 4 started. We don't flinch. She returned inside, unrolled fresh canvas. Color would answer menace, again and again, until stories outnumbered ghosts. Danielle's photograph of the fuel-soaked origami cranes reached Julius Grant just as he stepped into the 20th floor conference suite where the North River Grant integration team planned to finalize logistics software migration. He had slept scarcely 2 hours, lulled only by the afterglow of the council victory and the rhythmic memory of gravel crunching beneath that improvised waltz. The picture yanked him into fresh danger, diesel slick iridescent, teal cranes bleeding dye like wounded birds. Beneath the image, Danielle had typed, Art bleeds like numbers, watch the water. Julius excused himself from the meeting before anyone could greet him, citing a systems alert. In a quiet stairwell, he dialed Detective Lucas Figueroa. Phase 4, he said without preamble. Someone dumped fuel behind Danielle's annex. Lucas cursed. Environmental sabotage. Patterns escalating, psychological warfare to public spectacle. Cameras? Julius asked. Nearest traffic cams offline since midnight. Pulse glitch, could be remote jam. Lucas's voice hardened. They're refining tactics. I'll dispatch forensics. Alert Coast Guard pollution unit. Julius ended the call and dialed Marcella. Initiate an environmental response team. Contain that spill. Full transparency. Press release in 30 minutes. Yes, sir, Marcella replied, tone brisk but underneath it a tremor of anger. I'll be on site. Julius thumbed the phone back into his pocket, revisited Danielle's message and typed, "Response crews en route. Meet me at the annex, 10 a.m. And please, don't work alone until we lock this down." He nearly added a line about safety, about worry, but settled for a terse. Danielle watched hazmat technicians unload absorbent booms along the canal, dawn light catching on their reflective vests like shards of broken sunrise. Ramirez stood beside her, arms folded. "Could have been worse," he muttered. They wanted shock value, not ecological disaster. Yet, inside the annex, apprentices scrubbed brushes, tension warping their chatter. The half-finished hospital mural, a modulated bloom of blues and violets, felt suddenly fragile against the stench of fuel. Danielle forced her focus onto practicalities. Ventilate studio, double-check solvent storage, swap cotton rags for anti-static cloth to reduce ignite risk. She repeated instructions aloud, voice steady. To prove she could still command a space, Alana arrived mid-scrub, escorted by Officer Green. She wore her scrubs under a denim jacket, eyes ringed with fatigue but blazing with purpose. "I'm not spending my life in lockdown," she declared before Danielle could object. "I belong at the pediatric ward, and you need help." Danielle embraced her sister, breathing in the sterile soap scent of the hospital. "We won't let fear script us," she said softly. Still, she assigned Alana to inventory exits and verify the smoke detectors Officer Green had installed, in case. At 10 sharp, Julius entered the annex with Marcella and 2 corporate sustainability managers. The moment he stepped across the threshold, solvents, damp canvas, and chemical tang overwhelmed the filtered air of boardrooms. Danielle emerged from behind scaffolding, wiping paint from her wrist. He noticed she had tied a red bandana over her braids, as though donning armor. "Spill contained," Marcella reported. "Local news running footage of cranes on boom pads, publics framing it as community vigilance rather than crisis." "Good," Julius said, but his gaze didn't leave Danielle. "You all right?" "I'm painting," she replied, as though the question were redundant. Then she motioned him deeper into the studio where a fresh canvas towered, a 5-meter vertical triptych panel dwarfed by scaffolding. Its top third was already washed in a field of warm amber, sunrise bleeding upward. The middle third held underpainted silhouettes of cranes and human figures. The bottom third was blank darkness. "I call it Horizon Ledger," she said. "Top, what we hope for. Middle, what we negotiate. Bottom, what they'll push on us if we forget." Julius ran a hand along the wooden stretcher bar, anchoring himself to its solidity. "What do you need?" "Witnesses," she answered. "Eyes that record precisely who does what next. Your company's cybersecurity hub. Can it live stream a 24-hour camera from my roof, unedited?" He nodded. "Yes. And drones," she added. "Not for vanity shots. Surveillance. If saboteurs approach again, we broadcast them." Julius looked to Marcella. She was already typing. "We'll mount encrypted feeds. Archive every frame." Ramirez cleared his throat. "And if they escalate beyond sabotage?" Julius met his gaze. "Then we escalate protection. Every tool, legal or technological, at our disposal." Danielle's eyes flashed. "Art shouldn't need bodyguards." "Sometimes stories survive because someone chose to guard them," Julius replied. Across town at Crescent DataWorks, a glass tower housing Grant Logistics' digital nerve center, cybersecurity lead Rahul Singh reviewed packets flagged overnight. Most were crude bot farm attacks, flooding social hashtags with smears. But one data stream caught his attention. Encrypted pings probing the company's IoT crane control servers. Origin masks bounced through Eastern European proxies. He phoned Julius immediately. "Someone's mapping our port automation interface. If Dryport Omega fails in council, they may sabotage hybrid cranes to claim your compromise harms productivity." Julius stood by a stack of canvas frames in the annex, phone pressed to ear. Can we firewall them? Already did, but we need to audit every third-party vendor. Too many legacy modems on old firmware. They exploit one, they hijack a crane, public disaster. Julius envisioned an 800-ton gantry misloading containers onto passenger ferries, images that would sear across headlines. Deploy White Hat team to the harbor immediately, he said. Replace modems, patch firmware by midnight. Will cost $500,000 in overtime, Rahul warned. Spend it, Julius barked. Bill me personally if finance balks. He ended the call, found Danielle mixing Viridian Green. They're pivoting from physical sabotage to cyber. She gave a tight nod. Paint can't shield servers. But servers can shield paint if they prevent the meltdown that would kill your movement. By early afternoon, Mayor Thomas Keene summoned Julius and Danielle to a private meeting at City Hall. The mayor, a pragmatic centrist with re-election 8 months away, needed optics managed. We've contained the spill, he began, palms pressed together on oak desk, but public anxiety climbs. Investors whisper about logistics instability. I need assurance your hybrid cranes won't collapse under cyber sabotage. We're deploying a White Hat team, Julius explained. Keen-eyed Danielle. And the mural activists? I support free expression. But if your art rallies blockades that delay shipments, State Commerce Board will intervene. Danielle leaned forward, voice frost clear. Our art rallies attention, not vandalism. The only people delaying shipments are saboteurs Harriet's allies hired. Keene tapped a pen. Perception shapes bonds ratings, Ms. Brooks. Keep the peace. Peace without justice is sedation, she replied. Julius sensed sparks and interjected. Mr. Mayor, we'll coordinate with your communications office, issue joint updates. Transparency will calm markets faster than suppression. Keene exhaled, tempered. Very well. But if another incident threatens public safety, I lock the port for federal review. Julius stiffened. That would strangle our city. Then make sure incidents end, Keene concluded. Twilight found Danielle back on the scaffolding, brushes dancing despite aching shoulders. She painted a half-transparent human figure inside the silhouette of a crane cab, person and machine cohabiting. Below glimmer, darkness waited. She dipped into deep umber for the lower third, shaping protostars of dim LED lights overhead. Alana, off shift and still wearing her ID badge, climbed onto the platform with 2 paper cups of ginger tea. The security detail waited below. Any luck sleeping? She asked. Danielle shook her head. My dreams glitch, timers, crosshairs, cranes shaped like ribs. Alana squeezed her shoulder. Therapists at the hospital offered sessions for staff. You could tag along. I will, Danielle promised, though part of her believed paint was therapy enough, brush strokes exhaling nightmares onto canvas knots. Below, Julius arrived, laptop bag slung across. He signaled Danielle to descend. She left Alana shading stars and climbed down. We may have a preemptive strike, Julius said. Rahul traced the cyber probes. They spoof university research nodes, but pattern matches a private defense contractor, Argonarch. Harriet's allies? Danielle guessed. Argonarch consults for 3 rival freight conglomerates, Julius confirmed. Lucas is filing subpoenas for router logs. Without hard evidence, we can't publicly name them. Evidence is paint's sibling, Danielle mused. We give people an image they cannot ignore. Then the tech evidence lands, confirming what hearts already suspect. Julius studied her face in the sodium glow, smudges of ochre at her temple, exhaustion etched like fine cracks. He reached out, then thought better, dropping hand back to side. Danielle, when this ends, she met his eyes. If it ends. When it ends, he insisted. I'd like to take you again to the cafe where we met. No cameras, no crises, just coffee. She smiled. An unguarded sunrise. I'll spill yours first to keep the flavor authentic. A laugh escaped him, easing knots in his chest. In that sound he heard hope forging armor. At midnight, white hat crews swapped the last outdated modem on Crane C-48. Rahul monitored network telemetry, probes dropped to 0. He sipped cold chai, triumphant. Then a red alert flashed, motion anomaly, Pier 7, storage warehouse. Infrared showed 3 figures breaching a door. He patched CCTV to police dispatch while dialing Julius. Danielle and Julius were perched on the annex roof, filming a time-lapse of the mural under moonlight when the phone rang. Julius's face paled. "Intruders at Pier 7. Art supplies warehouse," Danielle said. "Oil barrels, solvents stored there too." They sped in his car, Ramirez close behind on a motorbike. Police units converged. By arrival, flames already licked warehouse rafters. Explosions popped, paint thinner igniting. Fire crews battled back, but half the stock dissolved into black smoke. Danielle's knees buckled. Julius caught her. "We'll rebuild," he whispered. Through tear-blurred eyes, Danielle saw shapes fleeing behind container stacks. She pointed. Ramirez and a police sergeant gave chase. Shots rang, warning pops. One figure stumbled, tackled, cuffed. Another escaped into labyrinth of boxes. The captured man wore Argon Arc logo on tactical vest. Detective Figueroa arrived, read rights, bagged evidence, phone logs, ignition accelerant. Julius stood over the man, voice iron. "You risked lives for sabotage. Tell your employers we paint in ashes if we must." The mural, half-finished, survived. Danielle returned before dawn, eyes raw, but determination incandescent. Apprentices tooled in silence, grief channeled into precision. Julius brought replacement pigments ordered overnight from a rival supplier offering solidarity discount. By sunrise, the warm, amber upper third gleamed brighter against smoky horizon. Danielle used charred slats from the burned warehouse to add texture, scars built into image. She titled The Bottom Darkness, Where Silence Fails. Harbor news feeds exploded. Argon Arc contractor arrested, sabotage confirmed. Mayor Keene publicly commended Grant Logistics' swift cyber defense and transparency. ESG funds doubled their holdings, stock rebounded. But across hidden networks, the digitized voice intensified directives. Last resort, Crane catastrophe. Upload malware into a single gantry, cause container collapse, blame hybrid complexity. Timetable, within 48 hours. Rahul detected unusual traffic at 03:12 a.m. Deep-level firmware command on Crane A11, disguised as diagnostic update. He locked access, but command rerouted via compromised maintenance technician tablet. He traced login, stolen badge of a contractor missing since warehouse fire. He alerted Julius and Lucas. They convened in cyber ops room, screens flickering, Crane schematics. "They want kinetic damage," Rahul explained. "If a container drops on fuel pipeline, harbor shuts for months." Lucas assembled emergency SWAT insertion on catwalks. Julius insisted on going. Danielle, notified by Julius's quick text, arrived panting, insisting too. Lucas argued. Danielle countered, "I know the Crane's ladders, vantage points. I'll spot intruders." Julius stood with her. Lucas relented. "Body armor, headsets, no hero plays." They geared up, drove to the pier in unmarked SUVs. Wind howled, container stacks like silent monoliths. Crane A11 towered, lights flickering abnormal red, a sign of firmware override. Tactical teams secured perimeter. Julius, Danielle, Lucas, and Rahul ascended maintenance lift shakily. At 120 feet cab level, wind buffeted but moon offered visibility. Inside control booth, a slim figure hunched over console injecting code via laptop. SWAT flashlights blinded him. He raised a hand holding a detonator trigger wired into the Crane's emergency hydraulics. One press, load would free fall. Danielle recognized him, the escaped saboteur from warehouse fire, face now smeared with soot, eyes frantic. "Step back," he yelled. Next, click drops container. A 12-ton container dangled over pipeline feeding bunker fuel depot. Julius's mind raced. If it fell, explosion radius 200 meters. Lucas negotiated. Typical hostage drill. But the man's breath rattled with fanatical urgency. "You ruined the market," he spat. "Our investors demanded correction." Danielle watched his thumb twitch, saw bleached adrenaline in pupils. She glimpsed broken wires on detonator, jury-rigged. She realized device requires both crane command and manual trigger. Rahul had locked command, trigger alone useless. She stepped forward. "Drop it," she said, voice calm. "The circuit's dead. Your handler lied." The man's eyes flickered doubt. Rahul murmured over headset, "She's right. The crane ignores his signal." Danielle advanced 2 more steps. "They threw you in here as sacrifice. Arrest or death, they wash hands of you." Thumb hovered. Julius held breath. Saboteur's shoulders sagged. Detonator slipped from fingers, clattered. SWAT lunged, cuffed him. Crisis diffused. Danielle exhaled, knees soft. Julius steadied her. Under spinning beacon lights, they embraced, armor plates clanking. At sunrise, news broke. Crane attack thwarted, suspect in custody, evidence linking to Argon Arc boardroom faction. Federal agents raided corporate suites across 3 states. Stocks of anti-union freight conglomerates nosedived. Congressional committee scheduled hearings titled Corporate Sabotage and Port Security. Mayor Keene declared Harbor Heritage Overlay fully enacted. Governor visited mural site promising state grants. In a small cafe near Riverside Park, their cafe, Julius and Danielle finally sat. No cameras. He spilled her coffee deliberately. She laughed, tears mixing. "Questions you fear to answer?" she asked, echoing months past. He considered, "What does power become when shared?" She nodded, stirring sugar into coffee-soaked saucer. "We'll spend a lifetime painting that answer." Outside, Pier 32's crane stood composed like choir singers readying a hymn. Ghost cargo had become human cargo once more. Stories lifted into daylight. Spring rolled into early summer before Crescent Harbor caught its breath, but by June the city could almost pretend the winter's ghosts were just rough surf memories. Container traffic surpassed its pre-crisis volume. Tourists snapped selfies beside Danielle's murals, and Julius Grant's hybrid port model became a staple in business school webinars. Yet not a single key player mistook the calm for closure. They felt it instead like that hush preceding a second storm. Unpredictable, electric. The summons from Washington arrived on the same humid morning 2 pelicans attempted to nest on Crane B-17's catwalk, a good luck omen according to Ramirez. Julius, Danielle, and Detective Lucas Figueroa were to testify before the House Subcommittee on Corporate Security and Labor Resilience, a hearing designed to wring headlines from the Argon Arc scandal and to shape future port automation policy. Julius accepted immediately, sensing the national megaphone might cement the heritage overlay's influence beyond state lines. Danielle hesitated. Travel meant leaving her hospital mural unfinished. But Alana, now outspoken spokesperson for trauma-informed nursing, insisted the testimony needed an artist's angle. Besides, she teased, congressional cafeteria macaroni counts as a once-in-a-lifetime anthropological event. 2 nights before they flew east, Julius's board of directors convened an unscheduled video conference. The chair's seat, vacant since Harriet Coe's arrest, looked oddly spectral on the screen until director Victor Shank cleared his throat. Victor, gray-templed CFO of an aerospace supplier, wasted no pleasantries. "We've received an acquisition proposal," he announced. "Oceanway Holdings, Singapore, all cash, 43% premium over Friday close. They want commitments to accelerate automation, globally." Julius straightened. "Oceanway is infamous for offshoring labor. Accepting kills our hybrid pledge." "Hybrid pledge," Victor scoffed, "was never ratified in the Articles of Incorporation." "It was ratified in practice," Julius said, "and practice writes future equity." Another director, the young hedge fund partner Liv Chen, interjected. Premium's irresistible. Fiduciary duty compels us to evaluate. Julius felt the floor tilt. Oceanway's timing, he realized, mirrored Harriet's ghost tactics. Strike when morality felt burdensome. We evaluate, yes, he stated, voice calm steel, but our duty also includes long-term risk. Heritage regulations spread coast to coast. Oceanway's model loses billions. Their premium is a bet they can strip protections before they propagate. Silence. Liv finally said, We'll table further debate until after your congressional testimony. Victor ended call abruptly, leaving the ghost chair still vacant. Julius exhaled through clenched teeth. He texted Danielle one line. Board just opened new front. She replied with a photo of her in painter's overalls, face spattered garnet red. Caption, fresh brushes ready. Washington's humidity greeted them like wet wool. The committee room, paneled in honey oak and history's ego, thrummed with TV crew whispers. Danielle wore navy jumpsuit beneath a cream blazer Alana insisted looked Congress casual. Julius opted for charcoal suit, teal pocket square, his subtle nod to the mural's hope ribbon. Lucas arrived in detective gray, case files stacked like bricks. The first witness, Argon Arc's ousted CEO, blamed rogue middle management and cybersecurity blind spots. Committee members peppered him with prepared outrage while he perspired into a monogrammed handkerchief. When Julius's turn came, he opened with a story instead of a statistic, recounting the morning he nearly greenlit mass layoffs and why an artist's dawn critique rerouted his compass. Cameras zoomed, some representatives rolled eyes at CEO redemption arc, yet Julius pressed on, correlating labor-driven adaptability with supply chain resilience. He cited Rahul's zero downtime record since hybrid adoption, the 12% error rate dip, and the 18% boost in local consumer spending. Economic graphs landed harder than sentiment. Next, Danielle stepped to the witness table carrying Ghost Cargo's miniature. She set it so the committee crest reflected off its varnish. Sabotage thrives where stories go silent, she said, voice steady. Our harbor's murals are not decoration, they are documentation, the first draft constitution of a city negotiating with its machines. She displayed before-after photos, Pier 7 burning versus mural rebuilt using its charred beams. We embedded scars into art because ignoring scars ensures infection. Representative Santos, skeptical, asked, Ms. Brooks, are murals policy? Murals are memory, Danielle replied. Policy without memory repeats disaster. Ask Argon Arc shareholders. The room murmured. Santos leaned back. Finally, Detective Figueroa laid out evidence, forensic audits, wire transfer chains, sabotage schematics. He concluded, protection of critical infrastructure is inseparable from protection of the workforce operating it. Cable pundits later disagreed on winners, but most conceded the trio offered a narrative difficult to spin as anti-innovation. Even Bloomberg scrolled a conciliatory chyron, hybrid port model gains bipartisan cred. That evening, Julius and Danielle walked the National Mall. Strawberry sunset gilded the monuments. Julius observed tourists photographing the reflecting pool's mirror of sky and stone. Everything's a mural, he mused. Just depends which way you hold the light. Danielle nudged him. You're becoming poetic. Careful, Wall Street'll downgrade you to impractical dreamer. He smiled. Oceanway's premium arrives at next board session. Dreamers get priced low, but sometimes they still refuse to sell. She stopped near the W. Tree Memorial fountains. Water plumed like breath. What if they vote you out? Oceanway will scrap hybrid, tear down murals saying they violate brand guide. Then we stage a proxy fight, Julius said, though the prospect felt like trench war. And if I lose, I start anew. Freedom's not share price. They stood quietly as dusk deepened, letting the roar of distant traffic substitute for answers. Back in Crescent City, Ramirez's phone buzzed at 3:02 a.m. The Crane Tower Nest Cam, a live feed installation Danielle's apprentices maintained for educational streams, showed a shadow scaling rungs of Crane C-13. Ramirez forwarded to Julius, who forwarded to Lucas. Police responded within 6 minutes. The intruder had vanished, leaving spray-painted words on the operator cab. Silence builds profits. Local news pummeled the footage. Oceanway lobbyists circulated op-eds claiming the obsession with art turned cranes into canvas for vandals. Julius's PR team countered, sabotage proved why community vigilance mattered. The stock dipped again, regained, then plateaued. Meanwhile, Danielle completed the hospital mural, a swirl of children releasing luminescent kites into starlit harbor skies. Oncology patients were wheeled down corridor to watch. Applause echoed like medicine. A 7-year-old draped in Spider-Man blanket asked Julius, visiting incognito, if the cranes outside would ever fly. He crouched, adjusting the boy's IV line gently. "They already do," he said, pointing to mural. "They just disguise wings as steel." The following Friday, the board convened in person, a full quorum, including Harriet's officially vacated seat, now filled by interim director A.J. Patel, a mid-30s venture capitalist with a track record for sustainable tech investments. Julius suspected A.J.'s appointment might swing the vote either direction. Victor Shank wasted no opener. Oceanway Holdings tabled final offer, escalated to 51% premium, accept or reject. His slide deck projected comparable deals: market consolidation, AI-driven margins, investor windfalls. Julius stood. Oceanway's valuation assumes deregulation that will not occur. Heritage overlays now pending in 3 states, congressional hearings trending bipartisan, their premium masks long-term contraction. Liv Chen retorted, "Shareholders expect optimized returns, not social engineering." "So we calculate real returns," Julius countered, cueing Rahul's remote feed. Rahul presented data. Hybrid model prevented sabotage downtime valued at $78 million, cut carbon fines, drew AAA green bonds with sub-market interest. Patricia Ross, pension fund director, chimed, "Our retirees want stable yield, not litigation fiascos." Victor narrowed eyes. "Emotion masquerading as prudence. I motion we accept Oceanway." Liv seconded. Julius called for vote. Hands raised. Victor, Liv, 2 others. 4. Julius, Patricia, AJ, and 2 ESG-oriented members. 4. Tie. Bylaws required chair's vote. Interim chair, rotating monthly, fell to Julius himself. He cast nay, breaking tie 5-4 in favor of rejection. Gavel struck. Victor's jaw clenched. "You just cost shareholders billions." "I preserved billions in 10-year net," Julius replied. Victor gathered papers. "Expect lawsuits." AJ lingered as room cleared. "Boardrooms evolve," he told Julius. "Resistance is last gasp before trendline bends. But remember, maintain profitability or idealism falls to scavengers." Julius nodded. "Help me ensure both." AJ offered a handshake. Covenant formed. That night, Danielle hosted an open-air projection event beneath Maple Yard's silo. She live-streamed a time-lapse montage: crane sabotage, Homeland Security hearings, hospital mural unveiling. She titled, "Film Vigilance, a Harbor Symphony." Hundreds attended, some in suits fresh from the board vote, others in paint-spattered jeans. At finale frame, an overhead shot of cranes at sunrise syncing with children's kite mural. Audience erupted, mixing applause with the ship horns Julius arranged as surprise accompaniment. The horns boomed across water, reverberating through rib cages like communal heartbeat. Julius found Danielle near the projector, face bathed in glow. "Congresswoman Torres called," he said. "She's drafting a National Port Resilience Act. Wants your film at launch." Danielle grinned, eyes shining. Stories scale. He slipped a small velvet box from jacket. Found this in Harriet's evidence crate. Inside, a lapel pin, North River's crest recast in reclaimed harbor steel. On back engraved, Cranes and Hands, One Harbor. Wear it if you wish. His cheeks flushed. She traced engraving. I will, but only if you let me redesign entire brand identity. He laughed. Deal. They turned toward the harbor. Across the water, lights of incoming freighter glittered. Danielle said almost to herself, every time a ship enters port, it carries two cargoes, goods and possibility. Possibility weighs less, yet profits more, Julius replied, draping his jacket over her shoulders against cooling breeze. She leaned into him, exhaustion softened by accomplishment. You know, Mr. Grant, that's the first line of your shareholder letter I'll design. He smiled into night. Co-authored? Co-authored. On the outskirts of the city, the digitized voice, its operators now fractured under federal subpoenas, issued a final message to dormant bots. Hold. Public sentiment unrecoverable. Resource burn exceeds ROI. Deactivate. A bot Farfield executed delete keystroke. Servers in anonymous racks word down. Silence at last answered sabotage's echo. But ghosts never vanish. They transform into stories or warnings. Crescent Harbor chose story. 3 days later, the hospital mural dedication drew national press. Children in wheelchairs unveiled a brass plaque reading, "Paint forgives crooked," dedicated to every hand steering cranes and caring for futures. Julius spoke briefly, but it was Danielle's words that sealed the moment. Art bleeds, she said, but it heals too, because it carries the iron in our stories into public bloodstream. If you ever wonder what a city's heart sounds like, listen to the crane's mourning horns, the nurses changing IVs, and the splash of paint over scars. That's us, still here. She looked at Julius, at Alana, at Ramirez, at cranes glinting outside high windows, each a testament that power shared, not hoarded, draped the city's shoulders like sunrise. Moon-white heat dominated July, baking Crescent Harbor's steel cranes until they shimmered like mirages, and warning alarms sounded twice daily for deckhands to hydrate. The crisis winter felt distant, a chapter relegated to podcasts, but Julius Grant knew better than to trust the lull. Between board meetings, federal working group calls, and nightly review of Rahul's cybersecurity dashboards, he counted 12 separate attempts to penetrate the port's IoT mesh in the past month. Each failed, yes, but each taught some unseen rival a little more about his defenses. Danielle Brooks sensed the tension in different registers. Where Julius saw threat graphs, she noticed faint shifts in people's posture. Shoulders that had relaxed after Harriet's arrest, now arching again when distant sirens rose. Apprentices who once joked while climbing scaffolding now glanced over shoulders before breaking for lunch. Art healed, she reminded herself, but healing scars could ache under pressure. So she proposed a festival. It began as a sketch on napkin during a late-night cafe planning session. Harbor Story Week, 7 straight days of public art workshops, labor history walks, container concerts, youth hackathons on green logistics, and an interfaith vigil on the pier. No corporate branding except small sponsorship footers, Danielle insisted. Stories first, marketing somewhere past the horizon. Julius not only agreed, he offered to underwrite stage rigs and ferry shuttles. Anonymous donation again, though everyone would guess. The mayor's office endorsed the plan, seeing tourism sparkle. City Council allocated a micro-grant for public safety and port police overtime. Danielle's apprentices cheered. Ramirez's union voted to volunteer as festival stewards in orange vests, spray-painted with the teal Hope River glyph. By first week of August, banners rippled from lampposts proclaiming Harbor Story Week, when hands and harbor speak. 3 days before the opening concert, Julius hosted a reception for the Port Resilience Act delegation, congressional staffers who had traveled to experience the hybrid model that inspired their bill. As they assembled in the operations tower, glassed sky bridge over container canyons, Rahul demonstrated real-time dashboards. Blue dots represented automated cranes, green, human-operated, teal, hybrid, collaboratively controlled. A staffer remarked the interface resembled Danielle's color palette. Julius merely smiled, pride and caution braided in his chest. Mid-tour, alarms flared. A crane on the far end of Pier 9 stuttered, its jib pausing mid-rotation. Rahul's console lit crimson. Manual override engaged. Signal local, not remote. Someone on that catwalk forced the crane to jerk, container swaying perilously over stacks. Julius excused himself, rallied Lucas Figueroa and port security to intercept. They dashed down metal staircases into furnace air. Congressional aides followed, some filming on phones. At catwalk ladder base, security officers found no saboteur, only a small drone perched on the access hatch, its rotors melted. A jury-rigged claw had inserted a steel rod into the crane's emergency gear to jam rotation. It was primitive compared to high-tech hacks. Still, 2 minutes more and 100-ton cargo could have crushed forklifts below. Lucas crouched, inspected the drone's burnt circuitry. "Off-shelf hobby kit," he said, but whoever piloted it did recon. He pointed to a faint teal line spray-painted on the catwalk, Danielle's hopeful river symbol, replicated crudely. "False flag," Lucas murmured. "Blame the mural crew." Julius stared at the imposter mark with a chill. Someone hijacked their emblem of rebuilding and turned it weapon. Before media twisted the story, Julius contacted Marcella. By sundown, footage from tower cams showing drone liftoff had been released along with an official statement, "Sabotage attempt thwarted by joint human-AI safety system." Most outlets ran positive headlines, but a fringe commentator clipped a single frame of the spray-painted teal line and accused Julius of staging harbor theater to glorify his fiancée's art. Fiancé, which they were not. Rumor spread anyway. Danielle first heard the term over a walkie-talkie atop the hospital scaffolding. "Your fiancé sure loves drama," a maintenance tech joked, repeating the talking head rumor. She nearly dropped a bucket of chrome yellow. Later, she confronted Julius in his penthouse kitchen, both wearing paint-spattered clothes. He from console screen to mural site, she directly from scaffold. "Fiancé?" she demanded, half amused, half alarmed. He raised defensive palms. "Not my doing. Someone weaponized the rumor to blur sabotage narrative." He paused, then forced a playful grin. "Unless you'd like to make it true preemptively? For strategy, of course." Her laughter popped, unspooling tension. "You propose like someone pitching bond issuance." Then cheek warmed. "Ask again when drones aren't dropping rods into cranes." He pretended to check calendar. "Next Tuesday?" She elbowed him, but within that mockery lay something steadying. An acknowledgement their bond existed, rumor or not. The knowledge they could joke about marriage in midst of crisis carried its own protective gravity. Harbor Story Week opened under bubble-white sails stretched between shipping containers that served as stages, galleries, and portable libraries. Children colored cardboard cranes, retired stevedores recited oral histories, and Julianne Prowse, a once reclusive singer-songwriter moved by the murals, performed an anthem titled "Lines on Water." Local news drones filmed the throng, global feeds picked up the mosaic of art and industry. On day 2, Congressman David Torres held a press conference on the main deck stage with Julius, Danielle, and Mayor Keene. Behind them loomed the silo mural, Horizon Ledger, newly sealed with UV-resistant varnish. Torres announced bipartisan committee passage of the Port Resilience Act. Crowds cheered. Confetti cannons fired teal and amber strips that glittered in sun. But among throng, a man in plain ball cap typed rapidly into a phone. Satchel slung across his chest carried more than pamphlets. He scanned stage exits, noting security patterns. When a volunteer offered him free lemonade, he smiled politely, then slipped behind a container stack. Minutes later, Danielle's apprentice Zoe radioed Julius. "Suspicious satchel under speaker tower." Security evacuated radius. Bomb squad arrived. Package contained no explosives, only printed manifesto condemning culture parasites who trade cranes for canvases and a thumb drive loaded with a worm targeting stage audio mixers. Rahul later found code identical to earlier IoT probes. Saboteur vanished into crowd. FBI liaison told Julius, "Not lone wolf, but cell. False flag ops will continue until higher financiers jailed." Lucas's task force traced drone purchase receipts to Shell LLC in Delaware, funds routed through cryptocurrency wallet flagged on previous sabotage, search warrants filed, but courts moved slower than cranes. Day 5 of festival, an electrical storm rolled off the Pacific, wind snapping banner ropes. Organizers debated canceling the night's container concert, headlined by rap ensemble K-Line. Danielle, voice hoarse from guiding wall poetry workshop, argued to proceed. Storm's just live percussion. Julius insisted on engineering checks. Ramirez supervised riggers installing additional ground wires into container stage to reduce lightning risk. Rain sheeted down as Quayline began, raindrops hissing on shipping container roofs. Their base reverberated over water while lightning flashed silhouettes of cranes beyond breakwater. Crowd danced, soaked, exhilarated. At the set's crescendo, the song Gantry Gospel, Quayline invited Julius and Danielle on stage. Julius declined. Danielle ascended, wielding fluorescent spray paint can to tag a quick river glyph across backdrop, audience roaring approval. Julius watched from crowd, umbrella forgotten. He realized specter of sabotage still loomed, yet the city had learned to celebrate without naive trust. Vigilance became choreography. He turned and glimpsed Ajay Patel holding a poncho hood, applauding. The venture capitalist leaned close. "Premium offers gone," Ajay said over music. Oceanway withdrew. Julius blinked. AJ continued. "But 2 major infrastructure funds propose minority stakes to replicate hybrid model globally. They want you and Ms. Brooks to present in Lagos next quarter." Thunder cracked. Julius grinned, rain mixing with relief. "Only if local dock workers co-design." AJ nodded, already part of term sheet. Early morning following final festival day, Danielle unlocked the annex to find a slim envelope slipped under door. No stamp, just her name penned in restless cursive. Inside, a charcoal sketch, her mural's hopeful river, but cut by a jagged X. And a message. "Stories drown faster than ships." She closed eyes, steadying breath. Fear reflex lessened. These threats had become static. She called Lucas, logged evidence, then stashed sketch in her process journal. Scar to integrate. Later, over croissants, Julius showed her an email from NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab inviting them to speak on human-robot collaboration aesthetics. She laughed aloud. "I'm just a house painter with overtime." He shook head. "You're the cartographer mapping trust." They toasted orange juice to improbable horizons. August rolled into September. Congress passed Port Resilience Act by healthy margin. President signed under West Wing portico. Crescent Harbor students watched live stream in classroom, cheering when Danielle's mural flashed during highlight reel. Victor Shank resigned, citing health. Liv Chen pivoted, launching a sustainable infrastructure fund referencing Harbor Story Week's success in its prospectus. Harriet Coe, awaiting trial, petitioned for plea bargain. Prosecutors demanded she testify against larger sabotage nexus. Mayor Keene established Harbor Memory Commission, chaired by Danielle, to archive Union Archives, board minutes, and mural digital twins under open license. Artists and accountants shared documents shoulder to shoulder. But more than policy-making, everyday rhythms realigned. Early each morning, Julius jogged pier with Alana and her nursing colleagues while dawn cranes honked like geese. He found breath sinking to mechanical groans, evidence that machines and lungs could harmonize. One evening, Julius surprised Danielle by clearing cargo yard to host open-air opera featuring local youth choir. She surprised him by choreographing drone light show painting Teal River across night sky. Alana stole microphone, announcing Julius and Danielle's engagement, fabricated at first, then accepted when Julius knelt with a washer nut threaded onto crane cable ring shank. Danielle laughed until tears came, said yes into cool, salt wind. Crowd roared. Cranes flashed navigation lights like confetti. Rumor turned prophecy, not strategy but joy. Late autumn's first tempest hit without sabotage. Hybrid cranes performed reliably, automated safety interlocks shielding workers from swinging containers while human crews rerouted cargo around flooded slips. Local radio hailed it as proof human-machine synergy outmaneuvered nature's fury. After storm cleared, Danielle and Julius climbed Crane C-13's catwalk where false flag had once marred metal. Together they painted over the fake teal with a new motif, intertwined initials, D and J, forming bridge between rails, water, sky. Ramirez whistled approval from below. Lucas, leaning against squad cruiser, snapped photo for evidence vault, then deleted copy from his phone, smiling at privacy's rare gift. Under setting sun, Julius asked Danielle what mural she would paint next. "Maybe none," she answered, surprising him. "I'm curious what art emerges when city paints itself." He considered. "Then let's build easels for everyone." Wind carried gull cries. Cranes stood sentinel, gleaming with promise rather than threat. And somewhere, unseen servers purged sabotage scripts, their deleted bytes scattering like flung confetti across cyberspace. Footnotes to a chapter Crescent Harbor refused to relive. The Harmattan wind that met Julius Grant and Danielle Brooks on the tarmac at Murtala Muhammad International Airport was a furnace-blown cousin to Crescent City's briny breeze, gritty, dry, and redolent of distant savanna dust. It was November, 2 months after Harbor Story Week, and Lagos was the first stop on what trade magazines were hailing the Hybrid Harbor World Tour. Julius's board had approved a pilot partnership with Westport Authority. 3 hybrid cranes, a labor artist apprenticeship program modeled after Danielle's annex, and a real-time transparency portal that streamed crane telemetry and union wage data side by side. Investors called it radical. Local stevedores called it overdue. From the VIP gate, they could already see the silhouettes of the Lekki deep-sea cranes, taller than any in Crescent Harbor, their booms stark against a copper sunrise. Captain Aisha Bello, Westport's operations chief, met them in a battered pickup, sleeves rolled to reveal forearm tattoos of nautical coordinates. "Your hotel cars are stuck in customs," she said over the growl of the engine. "Paperwork slower than tides. Hop in." 20 minutes later, they bumped along clay roads, past stalls selling ground nut cakes and phone card scratchers. Julius jotted notes despite the jolts. Inadequate access roads could throttle throughput, solar canopy potential on warehouse roofs, local schools within 2 kilometers. Good for apprenticeship recruitment. Danielle captured colors, indigo wrappers, saffron dust, the crane's pewter skeletons backlit by turquoise lagoon. They reached a pier canopy sheltering a cluster of dockworkers. Some leaned on rebar stilettos, others cupped morning pap porridge in plastic bowls. Aisha introduced Julius and Danielle in Yoruba and English. A hush fell, part skepticism, part curiosity. Julius spoke first, recounting Crescent Harbor's winter of sabotage and the labor-art alliance that rebuilt trust. He avoided jargon, kept sentences lean, offered numbers on injury reductions and wage growth. Danielle unfolded a cloth scroll, a portable mini-mural showing crescent cranes interwoven with African adir patterns, teal Hope River threading between continents. She passed paint markers, inviting anyone to add strokes. A wiry young stevedore named Kehindi drew red kora strings on a crane cab. An older woman added cocoa pods in the container stacks. The hush cracked into laughter. Only one man hung back, huge shoulders, pitted cheek, a scar crossing nose. He wore a cap emblazoned with the logo of Macro Trans Conglomerate, the shipping titan rumored to resent Westport's hybrid partnership. He watched Julius with eyes like latched doors. At the Echo Atlantic Conference Center that afternoon, Julius outlined the pilot to an audience of investors, ministers, and NGO observers. Behind him, a live feed of Crescent Harbor's teal-lit cranes rotated. Adjacent screen displayed Westport's baseline metrics. If pilot succeeded, throughput could rise 12% with no net layoffs and 18% rise in local vendor contracts. Applause polite. During Q&A, a delegate in Macrotrans lanyard raised her hand. How does Grant Logistics ensure sabotage won't power down a city reliant on your proprietary firmware? Julius answered with Rahul's open-source platform pledge. Westport's code would be forkable, audited by joint labor councils. No black boxes. The delegate smiled thinly. Danielle in back row felt the air tighten. That evening, at the waterfront warehouse converted into mural lab, Danielle convened 20 apprentice artists and dock workers for planning. The building's walls sweated humidity, and fluorescent lights flickered. She projected a sketch, a triptych titled Bridges of Breath. Left panel, Crescent Harbor cranes. Center, two hands passing a lantern across ocean. Right, Lecky cranes under kente-patterned sky. As they mixed lime green paint, the scar-nosed man from morning entered, clutching a security vest. Aisha followed, jaw rigid. "Meet Bode," she announced. "Head rigger, Macrotrans's union affiliate. Doesn't smile much." Bode offered curt nod. "We load 90-hour weeks. Your murals won't lift containers." Danielle wiped sweat, studied him. "Murals won't, but people who paint them will sense ownership. And ownership lifts more than cranes." He grunted. "Talk pretty. Pilot fails, wages drop." She stepped closer. "Pilot fails only if sabotage or mistrust sabotage it. Help me paint truth. Help pilots prevail." Bode considered, then shrugged off cynicism. "Need forklift to move scaffolding," he said. "I'll get keys." Danielle exhaled, feeling first domino shift. While she painted, Julius and Aisha met Westport IT in a server room cooled to fridge chill. Rahul on encrypted video guided engineers installing intrusion detection nodes. Julius's phone buzzed. Marcella reporting from Crescent City. Harbor Union Pension Fund greenlit investment into Lagos apprenticeship grant. Julius smiled. Minutes later, Victor Shank texted from his private number despite resignation. "Singapore venture still alive. Board may override you once revenue dips. Remember fiduciary." Julius pocketed phone. Another ghost of the past. He focused on present. Canon of cables, routers, honest code. The sabotage signal came on the pilot's third night. Rahul's dashboard flagged unscheduled firmware push to one of the new hybrid cranes. Identical tactic to Crescent sabotage but disguised in Lagos network chatter. Julius, asleep at hotel, jolted awake by call. Aisha deployed security. Bode intercepted a skinny tech near the crane base with stolen contractor badge. No explosives but a USB labeled firmware patch. Inside code, Rahul later revealed, lay a payload that would have reversed kill switch logic, turning safety interlock into accelerant of disaster. Police found Macrotrans shipping manifest in suspect's backpack. Newspapers ran with angle. Macrotrans issued denial, but Ministry of Labor launched inquiry. Public sentiment swung behind hybrid pilot. Bode visited mural lab next day, removed cap. "Loaders want to help paint," he told Danielle. She handed him roller brush. By dusk, orange overalls dappled paint like war paint. Back in Crescent Harbor, Harriet Coe took the stand. National feeds broadcast her deposition. She detailed sabotage contracting chain, naming Argonarch executives, Macrotrans middlemen, digital mercenaries. In exchange, prosecutors recommended 20-year sentence instead of life. Harriet's gaze never wavered when describing Julius. "He forgot profit measure." Viewers debated whether statement condemned or praised. Julius watched feed from Lagos hotel lobby, surrounded by local crew. Danielle sat beside, sketchbook on lap. When Harriet mentioned him, Danielle squeezed his hand. He felt no triumph, only sorrow at mentor fallen. Camera panned to Harriet's hands twisting cuff chain. white knuckles compressing memory of empire lost. Hybrid cranes passed first throughput tests, 1% above forecast. Safety audit cleared them. Westport's CEO signed memorandum to expand to 10 cranes pending 90-day review. Press hailed it the Lagos Accord. At celebratory dinner, Julius toasted dockers and coders in same sentence. Danielle unveiled bridges of breath projected onto warehouse wall, drone-lit. Red Cora strings quivered in wind, teal river stitched continents. During applause, a courier delivered Julius a letter bearing Grant Logistics' seal. He opened, board notice of extraordinary session to discuss strategic merger opportunities, remote attendance mandatory, agenda undisclosed. Danielle read over shoulder. They'll try Ocean Way again? Or Macrotrans, Julius murmured. Sabotage fails. Buy instead. He stepped outside into humid night, calling Ajay. The VC answered amid party noise. Julius explained letter. AJ sighed. Some directors want quick liquidity. ESG points nice, but premiums shinier. Will you back me? I'll back numbers, AJ replied. Prove pilot profitability and risk mitigation outweigh premium. Give me 90 days, Julius said. You have 60, AJ answered. Then softer. I trust you, but trust's half on paper. Julius hung up, pulse hammering. 60 days to lock global proof. On flight home, Danielle designed infographic. Hybrid pilot savings, sabotage prevention, apprenticeships wages. Julius drafted strategy. Rally pension funds to threaten divestment if board sells. Enlist labor unions globally to pre-order hybrid cranes. Preempt Macrotrans by filing intellectual property trust that binds hybrid patents to worker board oversight. Miles above Atlantic, turbulence jittered coffee across tray table. Julius steadied cup, said, We fight takeover with alliances, not lawsuits. Danielle sketched handshake morphing into crane hook. And paint campaign showing what selling out looks like. Ghost Harbor. Orphan cranes. Back in Crescent Harbor, they landed to news. Macrotrans filed hostile tender for 35% shares through shell funds. Stock soared. Media framed Julius versus conglomerate as Cranes and Chains Battle for Port Soul. Marcella organized emergency town hall livestream. Julius addressed shareholders. Value built on trust outlasts premiums. Vote no to quick sale, yes to enduring return. Danielle followed, unveiling Lagos mural photo. She captioned, Sold harbors can't build bridges. Within 24 hours, 14 state pension funds issued joint statement. Oppose Macrotrans bid. Stock dipped but stabilized. Board meeting loomed. Harbor night before vote, Julius found Danielle at Silo Base, alone finishing a new panel. Cranes outlines dissolving into bird wings. Moon backlit her, brush gliding restful. I might lose tomorrow, he said. And Macrotrans will erase these murals, replace with ads. She set brush down. Paint survives in memory. They erase walls, we paint sky with drones. Fail tomorrow, fight next day. He exhaled, slow. Will you still marry someone jobless and litigated? She laughed. Jobless maybe, never powerless. They embraced. Board session convened in glass atrium. Macrotrans proposal item 1. Victor absence replaced by interim director from Macrotrans allied hedge fund. Tension crackled. AJ requested Julius present pilot data before vote. Chair allowed. Julius showed Lagos numbers. 9% cost reduction, 0 lost jobs, sabotage thwarted. Then played 1-minute video, dockers and apprentices cheering at mural unveiling, Bode holding brush, kids dancing. Music faded, screen displayed pension fund letter pledging proxy votes against sale. Liv Chen leaned into microphone. Pension votes plus Julius's own shares block tender. Macrotrans will litigate. AJ countered, litigate where? In courts reading Port Resilience Act precedent, they'll fold. Chair called vote, accept Macrotrans tender, 3 yes, 6 no. Proposal failed. Applause erupted, not protocol, but directors allowed themselves moment. Julius closed eyes, relief flooding. AJ approached afterwards. You won, but make profits real quick or next bidder tries. We scale Lagos model, Julius said, and next quarter unveil Westport ESG bond. AJ grinned, and I'll lead Series G. Weeks later, Crescent Harbor celebrated 100 days without sabotage. Mayor dedicated new heritage park at former warehouse fire site. Danielle unveiled sculpture, charred crane gear fused into river-shaped ribbon. Plaque read, "Here stood a warehouse of flames. Now flows memory." Lucas Figueroa announced final indictment list. Argon Arc executives, macro-trans operatives, digital mercenaries. Trials to start spring. Harriet, watching from detention cell, penned article titled "Regret as Currency," published in Harbor Journal. She wrote, "I underestimated stories. Numbers can be stolen. Stories replicate. Public reaction mixed, but many found cautionary grace. NASA sent formal invitation. Danielle and Julius to keynote Robotics and Humanity Symposium." Julius asked, "Coffee first?" She, "Always." One early December evening, they hosted intimate engagement party on Ghost Cargo Pier. Ramirez grilled seafood, Alana played violin, Cranes lit teal. Julius toasted, "To stories that refuse to drown." Guests raised cups. As stars ignited over bay, Danielle whispered to Julius, "Section 10 of our story still blank." He kissed her forehead. "We'll paint it sunrise by sunrise." Cranes creaked like old poets settling to listen, and water beneath reflected lights in ripples. Not perfect mirrors, but living canvases, forever rewriting Harbor's tale. The rains returned to Crescent City in soft veils that smelled of iron and bay laurel, rinsing graffiti from alley bricks and setting ship horns echoing like low brass. By late January, the harbor's morning soundtrack blended seagull cries with construction hammers and the hiss-click of hybrid cranes gliding in faultless synchrony. People called it the new ordinary. Julius Grant, however, recognized it as something rarer, a city practicing its next heartbeat. The new ordinary began at Dawn Court, 6 weeks after Macrotrans's tender defeat. Inside Judge Yvonne Castell's austere courtroom, Argon Arc executives faced sentencing. Harriet Coe, now gaunt but resolute, sat in khaki prison garb at the prosecution table. She had completed 2 days of testimony delineating sabotage chains, crypto payments, and the perception collapse protocol. Her confession landed heavy as anchor. The gallery, packed with dock workers, muralists, and curious financiers, waited to see if contrition tempered consequence. Judge Castell delivered sentences with scalpel precision, 25 years each for Argon Arc's orchestrators, plus restitution equal to twice the harbor's repair costs. When she addressed Harriet, her tone shifted. "Ms. Coe," she said, "you turned mathematics into a weapon against lives you once uplifted, and yet you're the reason authorities traced the conspiracy's spine. Justice must hold both truths." She imposed 18 years, eligibility for parole after 10, contingent on continued cooperation with international investigations. Harriet bowed her head, acceptance mingling with unspoken grief. Outside, camera flashes spotted rain droplets. Danielle Brooks, attending with Alana and Ramirez, faced microphones as spokesperson for the Harbor Memory Commission. "Justice," she told reporters, "isn't one verdict. It's the promise we'll remember why sabotage started and why it failed." A journalist asked if the harbor still feared more attacks. Danielle nodded toward the cranes beyond courthouse windows, stalwart, their teal safety lights winking in drizzle. "Fear still rides the tide," she answered, "but we've learned to sail alongside it." Preparations for the NASA Robotics and Humanity Symposium swept Julius and Danielle into a frenzy of red-eye flights, lecture drafts, and biotech immunizations for upcoming site visits. They rehearsed their joint keynote over sticky buns at their favorite riverside cafe. Julius tapping bullet points on tablet. Danielle sketching slide backgrounds with watercolor washes of copper and ultramarine. "You'll start with the fable of the two cargoes," she decided, dabbing blue onto a wave. "Goods and possibility, remember? And you'll close with the formula. Trust equals transparency times time," Julius replied, adjusting her palette to keep ochre from spilling. Simple enough for a flight deck captain and a senator. 3 days before departure, NASA requested they bring a physical artifact symbolizing collaboration. Danielle chose a crane gear recovered from warehouse ruins, now sandblasted and engraved with her river glyph. Julius secured a mini-server loaded with open-source crane firmware code. They packed both into carry-ons wrapped in harbor print cloth. At Cape Canaveral, the symposium's opening ceremony combined astronaut suits with kente stoles and Union jackets. Roboticists from 5 continents milled beneath full-scale mock-ups of Mars cargo landers. When Julius stepped to the lectern, he surveyed the sea of badges: ETH Zurich, Shanghai Jiaotong, Lagos Tech, Crescent City Annex. He began, "Every machine is a question. The answer is written by the people it serves or the people it displaces." He recounted Crescent Harbor's winter, sabotage, council battles, Harbor Story Week. Then he invoked Lagos, where a single crane jammed by sabotage failed to disrupt hybrid operations because human crews knew how to override code. "Redundancy is resiliency," he concluded. "Automation without humanity is vandalism by another name." Danielle took the podium. She set the crane gear on a stand, placed Julius's server beside it, and clicked the remote. Behind them bloomed a time-lapse of harbor murals: Ghost Cargo, Horizon Ledger, Bridges of Breath, intercut with telemetry graphs. "Art is firmware for the soul," she told the audience. Paint wrote patches to Julius's code. Code now prints color onto cranes that carry satellites. Where you send machines, send stories too. A hush followed, then thunderous applause. Subsequent panels buzzed with hybrid ethics citations. A German engineer proposed embedding micro-mosaic panels onto rover hulls to honor local myths of landing sites. A Japanese roboticist suggested union coders sign commits like artists sign canvases. The idea that cranes and brushes share a handle caught fire. While Julius and Danielle toured launch pads, Crescent City rehearsed another shift. Mayor Keene fast-tracked an ordinance requiring any corporate acquisition of harbor infrastructure to submit to a community vote if proposed within 5 years of sabotage incidents. Council passed it 6-2. Investors moaned, rating agencies shrugged, pension funds cheered. At the annex, apprentices under Zoe's leadership completed a new series, Eyes on the Cab. It depicted 360-degree views from crane operator booths, each viewpoint ringed by portraits of nurses, truck drivers, coders, and school children, those who depended on the unseen operator's steadiness. The installation traveled to city schools via roving truck gallery painted indigo, becoming the first mobile union artist exhibition. Bode and Kehinde flew in from Lagos as part of exchange program. They marveled at Crescent's cool breeze and clam chowder, attended safety workshops, and taught local riggers an Afro-beat call and response to shout when securing lashings. Hook! Response. Hands! Within a week, the chant echoed across both harbors like transatlantic Morse code. In mid-March, Macrotrans executives signed a non-prosecution settlement in exchange for divesting sabotage-tainted subsidiaries and funding a global independent port security fund. Julius negotiated to have half that endowment managed by a board of dockers, artists, and cybersecurity specialists, an improbable alliance the Wall Street Journal called the Oxymoron Committee. Danielle retorted in an op-ed, "Oxymorons built every movement worth reading about." Federal marshals escorted the last digital mercenary into custody shortly after Harriet's sentencing. Lucas Figueroa finally permitted himself a vacation, remote Trout Lodge. He mailed Danielle a postcard. Cranes traded for herons. Both require stillness. Spring blossomed. Wedding planning ensued. Danielle and Julius shunned grand ballrooms, opting for the deck of retired freighter-turned-museum Constellation. They chose May 1st, International Workers' Day. Ramirez would officiate, Alana would sing. Invitations were printed on seed paper so guests could plant them. Each envelope bore a stylized teal river that, when unfolded, morphed into infinity symbol. The week before the wedding, Julius's lawyers informed him that the last shareholder lawsuit had been dismissed. Claimants conceded the hybrid model's superior returns. Julius set the letter on his desk, glanced toward silo mural visible through office window, and breathed deeper than he had in years. On wedding eve, Danielle stood on Constellation's deck alone, checking stage lights. Fog smoked over water. Behind her, footsteps. Julius, pressed trousers rolled at ankle, carrying 2 cups of cocoa. They surveyed horizon where cranes' red beacons punctuated purple dusk. "Stage lights ready?" he asked. "Cocoa ready?" she countered, accepting cup. He pointed to far crane. On its cab, operators had draped string lights forming DJ. Sensors winked teal. "I didn't arrange that," Julius said. "Neither did I," Danielle smiled. "Stories volunteer." Rain threatened but parted by dawn. Guests arrived by ferry boats flying Union flags and artist banners. Children scattered petals cut from recycled manifest paper. Harbor horns marked hour. Ramirez cleared throat, voice booming through portable amp. "Brothers, sisters, and folks of every cargo, welcome." He told abbreviated tale, numbers that forgot people, paint that reminded them, cranes that now speak both languages. "Marriage," he declared, "is a contract like any other, except breaches are patched by forgiveness, not courts." Julius's vows referenced invisible hands guiding visible steel. Danielle's spoke of wet brush whispering across gesso, of trust priming future surfaces. They exchanged rings machined from crescent and Lecky crane cable, spliced together by Bode on lathe. When Ramirez pronounced them partners under cranes and cosmos, harbor horns saluted, birds scattered, and confetti cannons, loaded with shredded sabotage court documents, burst skyward. Reception unfolded along deck. Afro-Latino band fused high life with cumbia. Zoe live-painted guests within a sprawling panorama. Aisha Bello and Kahindi taught hook hands chant to children. At twilight, Danielle climbed to ship's bridge for breath. Harbor glittered, a living mural. She sensed presence. Harriet Coe, not in flesh but memory, watching from cell perhaps. Danielle whispered, "Your numbers nearly drowned us, but you taught us to swim." Below, Julius launched drone show. Hundreds of lights spelled harbor of stories across sky, then shapeshifted into river glyph, flowing from Crescent Harbor to Lagos to Cape Canaveral, ending in silhouette of crane rising like phoenix. Guests gasped. Danielle's hand found Julius's. He asked, "Still want to paint the sky?" "Always," she said. The following months traced orbit rather than line, speaking tours, pilot expansions to Busan and Valparaiso, and board approval for harbor worker stock option pool. Danielle alternated between continent-hopping consultations and quiet studio days refining new series, echoes on hull, sculptures forged from scrapped firewall routers. One summer evening, after sealing last shipping crate bound for Cape Town exhibit, Danielle sat with Julius on pier edge, legs swinging above water. A light fog muffled city hum. "Crescent Harbor feels restful," Julius observed. "Rest never permanent," she said, "but repetition of hope can outnumber sabotage." She leaned head on his shoulder. "Let's keep count together." He kissed her forehead. "Chapter complete?" She laughed. "Story loops, but end of volume maybe." In far distance, a crane's cab speaker broadcast Ramirez leading night shift in hook hands chant. His basso call, workers' reply, a lullaby for machines. Harbor horns answered, rolling across bay. Danielle closed eyes, imprinting sound. When future storms arose, she would recall this cadence. Horns, chant, heart. She opened sketchbook, wrote final line. Here, where steel meets salt, we measure wealth by the stories we ship onward and by the hands that keep them afloat. And so ends today's journey through cranes, courage, and the currency of memory. If these hours on the pier stirred one thought or tightened one heartbeat, share a comment below. We read every name. Tap the like icon if Harbor of Stories earned your applause, and subscribe to stay aboard each new voyage we sail. Ring the bell so dawn finds you ready when our next tale anchors. Until then, keep your eyes on the cab, keep your paint wet, and remember, the richest cargoes are the ones we carry in common. Blessings, friends, from Crescent Harbor to wherever your shoreline meets the tide. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen